And good morning. It is a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. Good to be back in the office. Hopefully we won't have to do that again. Let's see, schools are closed again today. Why not? Why would kids need to go to school and learn? Just stay home and not do that.
There's no virtual days, or are they, I don't know.
I don't know if there are for anybody else. I mean, there weren't for my kids. They're virtually playing in the snow.
Oh, that's nice.
I guess. I went out to play football with my sons yesterday, and I'm pretty sure I got frostbite on my hand. Legitimately within...
You don't wear gloves? Or?
No, I did, but it was like kids' gloves because I wanted to be able to throw the football.
Okay.
Like I was looking for like thinner gloves because my son was expecting me to be the all-time quarterback for our game.
You know what you need is the thing that the actual quarterbs wear, like the little hand warmer pocket thing. So
yeah,
that
would be great. That
right
would be
there.
wonderful for the one time a year that this situation arises.
We might get another snow. You never know.
I sure as hell hope not. Hope that's not the case.
And there doesn't need to be snow on the ground either. Like
It's
football
true.
in the cold.
That's a good point. That is a good point. You could play football in the snow. Although I did see some people talking about the possibility of it snowing Saturday night during the game. No, I don't care for that one bit.
That'd be interesting.
No, it would not. No.
Well, you see, the Ravens
Just a reminder.
the Ravens have Derrick Henry.
That's
so
true. They do.
They also have Lamar Jackson.
Yep. I don't want anything that screws with the football game. Not one bit. Anything at all.
I'm for anything
Pass
that
on
would
that.
make the ticket prices lower as well. So.
Oh, yeah, that's what you're
Yeah.
worried about? Those are your concerns. Look, man, I don't want to talk about snow anymore. I talked about it. I have no, again, if you're, I'm trying to find the right word because the first word that comes to mind is child, but I'm worried that it's something more significant than that. If you're one of these adult creeps that gets uber excited about snow, and I mean it, there's something wrong with you. There is. Look, there's something wrong with all of us. And, like, I know that I shouldn't say seek help flippantly, but, like, we all should. All of us.
It is
There
pretty.
are plenty of things that are wrong with me. I assure you. But spare me. You're this nonsense. You don't like being an adult. And for a moment, you're like, ooh, I could act like a toddler again. Adulting requires you to recognize that, like, if you get a day off work, the work doesn't go away. Your company's not going to say, like, oh, there was snow yesterday? Well, now we don't have to worry about our sales goals. Forget it. Party. Let's all go to Tahiti.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it don't work that way.
I like that.
The work still exists. It's still there. If for some reason you get the choice of not doing it that day, it means you have to do twice as much work the next day. There is nothing good. It's just an annoyance. It just makes everyone's life more difficult. Unless you operate a snowplow company or, like, run a ski resort, something along those lines, if you get into snow, you have a problem. You are sick. There is something wrong with you, and you need help. I'm Glenn Clark, and I approve this message.
So as long as there's snow on the ground, that's how we're opening the show, and just.
I'm telling you, man. Every time I look at it, I get. It's like my infuriation. Every time I think about the Don Van Natta now, I'm just gonna remember that damn tweet that he sent about how dare the Chiefs not try. Like, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, what happened?
What about
to you?
how does Don Van Natta feel about the Bills playing Josh Allen for one play and then?
Yeah, who knows? I have no idea how he feels about it. This is the problem. I don't really want to fight with that because it has nothing to do with
What about forcing
nothing
Mike
to do with
Evans
Baltimore.
to?
I don't really give a rat's ass, but yet it for some reason bothers me because I otherwise respected Don Van Natta, and in that moment it made me think, like, did Don Van Natta have money on this? Like, that's the only. When these things happen, there's a famous clip of Mike Francesa flipping out over the Mets losing a game in the afternoon while he was on the air. Like, flipping out, losing his mind. And everyone on the internet was like, oh, well, this is obvious. Mike had a bunch of money on this game. Like, it's a baseball game. Nobody can flip out that much over one baseball loss, right? Like, they suck. I think that Diaz blew a save in the ninth inning or something like that. They all suck. Like, nobody's having a good time. But it is outrageous the way that he flips out over this one baseball game. And the entire internet is like, oh, well, that's obvious. Mike had a bunch of money on the game. So, like, it personally affects him a lot more than any other baseball game would. That's what, like, the Don Van Natta thing, you're such a respected journalist to react this way makes me start to question whether or not I should have ever respected you as a journalist or whether you're someone who has vested interest in something. So, yeah, that's got me worked up. Snow's got me worked up. It's annoying. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my kids for the day. They almost ended up here.
Ooh.
Nobody wants that. I'm done with that. Last time that happened, I ended up with a norovirus.
I'm getting used to them here. So
Yeah, sick of that. Go to school. Get a job. Do something. Allegedly, they shoveled the snow at my mother-in-law's house yesterday. Allegedly. And I'm sure that's only because they were paid. I have no doubt that they did not offer to go shovel Grandma's, walkway. I have no doubt that that's not the case. After the show yesterday, I, in fact, got out to go shovel myself. It was the greatest day of my life. I found out my wife had paid a man to come shovel for us. Now, that's money that we could have saved. So then, like, the first reaction is, what a nice surprise. Dad doesn't have to go outside and throw his back out. This is great. Then the second reaction is, piss. Lord knows what that just cost me. I don't have that. That's further and further away from ever owning a hot tub. I know that's how that works. Son of a bitch. Screw the snow. All right, here's what's coming up on the program today. Speaking of people I'm going to have to argue with, Jeff Chadiha, NFL.com, who I love, one of my favorites. Love that guy. But he just ranked the Super Bowl odds for all the playoff teams, and somehow he has first of all, having the Bills at number 1, even though the Ravens were number 2, having the Bills at number 1 would be wrong. It's wrong. Plain and simple, it's wrong. He has, like, the Bills at 1 and the Ravens at, like, 6, which is insanity. I mean, I love Jeff, but, like, this is doing the most. I got to talk to him about it. We'll talk about it. We missed him yesterday, but Dr. David Chao is scheduled to join us today to tell us more about Zay Flowers, and also we will talk college hoops as we do every Tuesday, as our buddy Patrick Stevens will check in with us. Obviously not a great weekend for not a great weekend for Maryland. Just bad trip out to the Pacific Northwest. I just got a funny text. I'm sorry. It's from Crockett Gilmore, the former Ravens tight end.
Okay.
Of course, Crockett caught a touchdown. Was sort of the game-winning touchdown the last time the Ravens played the Steelers in the playoffs in 2014. So I messaged him and asked if he wanted to come on this weekend. I said something like, you can give us all the secrets to beating the Steelers in the playoffs. And he just sent a text. He said, it's not a secret. Run the damn ball. Very funny. We'll see if Crockett will join us this week or not. I don't know. But that's a very funny text. I appreciate that, buddy. All right. Anyway, so nothing more to add. Obviously, last night my son is so football obsessed at the moment that he asked to watch North Dakota State, Montana State. He's just
You're
so
welcome. Yeah.
He's just so, I want a bowl game. Is there a bowl game? I mean, we've watched them all. We watched the First Responder Bowl. I mean, we've watched all of them.
It was a good bowl, I think.
It was competitive. It was a one-possession game at the end. But then, I don't remember if it was Texas State or Texas.
Most were.
It was North Texas or Texas. One of them got the ball back at the end with a chance and got sacked on the first play of the drive.
Must have been North Texas.
Sucked all the
Texas
air
lost.
out. Okay, so that's who it was. Sucked all the air out of the room. My son and I were all excited. We're like, yeah. And then the Mayo Bowl was not competitive.
No, the Mayo Bowl was not competitive.
Not a good game.
No.
But we've been into, and he was excited that the punter was from Calvert Hall. He did appreciate that. He was like, oh, really? But yeah, he's all in on football. So when he asked me yesterday, hey, is there a bowl game tonight? I was like, well, no. But
there's football.
There is a football game.
It actually matters more than any of the bowl games.
Yeah, something like that. Then I had to sit there and explain that to him. He's like, so wait, Montana State's number 1. I thought Oregon was number 1. It's a whole thing. It was annoying. And after I told him the history of North Dakota State being dominant, he was like, well, then I want to root for Montana State. And that went very poorly. It went
They made a
very
run.
poorly.
They made a run.
Yeah, it went very poorly.
They lost by 3.
Yeah, I
Had a
know, but it was
chance.
21-3.
If they decide to field the punt, which like
Anyway, so I did watch a little bit of that last night, and there was nothing. I mean, there really wasn't anything else going on. This is when you start realizing like this is what Monday nights are going to be.
We had
like.
Raw last night.
Yeah, that's actually what I watched afterwards. Legit, I was like, I guess I'll watch Raw. Everybody's talking about it. I guess I will. But you realize that you're going to have obviously the next 2 Mondays we'll have football games, and then Mondays get real bleak again. Real bleak.
Mondays.
Yep, that's what we got. That's the entire list of things.
Usually
that
like
we have.
one good Big 12 game too. So
yeah, you can't get me to. You just can't get me to care about
Houston basketball.
Who they play last night?
TCU, and they beat them by I don't know. I don't think TCU scored a point. Maybe
TCU didn't score 50. I know that much. I think they scored like 46, something along those lines. Yeah, you just can't get me to get excited about none. It's those moments. I deal with this. I start feeling this way about halfway through the football season. I really do. Where I'm like, oh God, football's gonna be gone soon.
No, you can't enjoy the moment.
I can't, man. Existential dread, dude. That's my life. Existential dread.
You don't worry about it until now. Now
no.
it's like,
now it's I can't even.
I'm gonna when I have football. When we got Maction in November, I'm enjoying it.
The infuriating part for me is that they went back to starting the Australian Open at the normal. They a couple years back after the pandemic, they'd moved the Australian Open back a couple weeks, and that was perfect because then after football, I had the Australian Open. Now, like next Monday night, I got a football game to watch. The Monday night after that, I got a football game to watch. I don't want those 2 weeks to be the weeks that we're doing the Australian Open. It's not that math don't math. Give it to me after football. Give it to me in February. That's when I need it. That's when my soul has been crushed, and I need a little pick-me-up. I wouldn't even mind if it was like starting, if it started the night of the championship games, because that was when it I swear it did start, was the night of the championship games, but then they bumped, obviously, the season back a week. And then like, you would use that to fill, like, after the championship games, you could fill 2 weeks between that and the Super Bowl watching tennis. It's just annoying. I'm so annoyed.
So when's the Aussie championship now? It's like it's over before the end of January.
Final will be, I guess the week between. No, the final will be on Championship Sunday. The morning of Championship Sunday will be the final, and they're starting on Saturday night now. They're doing the bit that everybody else does, where they play on the Sunday of the first week. It's a whole thing. Anyway, the moral of the story. What was I talking about? I don't remember what I was talking about.
You're upset because there's no football.
How depressed I am. How depressed the reality of not having football.
You know whose fault this is? It's the snow. The snow is making you just feel
No,
down.
Even if it was nice out, I would be still dealing with the depression of football going away. Like, it's just, like, this adds to it because you're like, this is what we have. Like, we then get like a month of just this.
Well, if you were able to go outside without getting frostbite on your hands throwing the football around,
yeah, that would be helpful. I don't disagree with that. I would prefer if I owned a hot tub. That would be helpful.
Okay, that's
as well.
it. Yeah.
Like there are a list of things that would change my opinion about certain subjects, but I don't have those things going for me in my life. Instead, my son just asked me if we can go to Dave & Buster's every minute. He'd be like, well, we got nothing to do. Let's go to Dave & Buster's. And I'm like, oh, good. I can pay $100 for you to get a $12 prize. That sounds like a great way to spend and I did it on Sunday.
Well, get better at the game.
My older son had like a hangout day with 2 of his buddies. And so my younger son's just sitting there like I got nothing to do. Nobody. He's like laying the guilt trip on. Like, my friends didn't want to hang out today. And then we had just been to my father-in-law's funeral the day before, so it was a really depressing weekend. She's just laying the guilt trip on me. Can we please go to Dave & Buster's? I'm like, well, dude, I don't think we can go to Dave & Buster's. You want to do something else? He's like, no, not really. Oh, then he did so right. He's like, we could go to the trampoline park.
Ooh.
All right, I guess Dave & Buster's it is.
What's wrong with the trampoline park?
No.
Oh.
No.
Trampoline park.
I'm too old, man. I can't, because then he wants it's not that he wants me to do the stuff with him anymore. Like, he's over that.
Okay.
I think. I say that. He wants me to, like, walk with him from station to station. No.
Well, you tell him you'll stay in one spot.
Yeah, that's what I try. And then he's like, he's still 7, so he's still like a little bit of the I'm nervous that I'm going to not see you at one point, or it's bad. So, yeah. That's my life. I don't know what just happened here. I think this was therapy. I'm not really sure. Is this how therapy works? Is this what it is? I'm not sure how any of this goes. But yeah, that's what's going on in the world. The Orioles. It'd be really nice if the Orioles would pick me up from my doldrums by.
They signed Charlie Morton. It was,
Yeah, they did. They sure did that.
Signed a pitcher.
They sure did that. All right. So what did happen? Gavin Lux got traded.
Yeah. Chris Martin went back to the Rangers, right?
Who did?
Chris Martin.
Oh, I did not.
Lead singer of Coldplay.
Oh wow, that's an interesting get. I watched that Avicii documentary.
Oh, you did?
Over the weekend.
Oh, I did not.
I don't know why I did because I wasn't even like a big Avicii fan, but like I recognize that he was a big deal for people.
I need to watch it actually.
It's depressing.
Yeah,
like it really is depressing. That's a bummer. I guess they were like filming.
Did you watch there were like 2 that came out, I think.
Well, one's just apparently a concert.
Yeah, just the concert. It was like his last concert.
Yeah. So one, I don't know if they were filming stuff.
Like
they were doing
that?
Like they had a lot of footage, like a lot of footage for this documentary. But I did watch that. What else? What else happened yesterday? We talked about the team. So I guess Antonio Pierce isn't getting fired.
Yeah,
I guess.
Good for him.
I guess that's the case. Mike McCarthy. Apparently, the Bears want to interview Mike McCarthy, but Mike McCarthy.
That seems to be the well. Maybe he could still be out because Jerry Jones does often. It feels like he waits.
To do things. It's so objectively hilarious what a Mickey Mouse operation that is. Like it's so funny how we as a country have allowed this to be held up and for them to continue to get these. Like at some point, people didn't say like it was one thing. When a bunch of people became Cowboys fans in the 90s because they were bandwagoners and they were winning. It makes no effing sense that there are human beings outside of the Metroplex that still give a rat's ass about the Dallas Cowboys. I don't even know what the comparison would be. I really don't. Most of the other franchises that were dominant once in sports like ended up having another moment where they were good again down the road. It's insane. We're talking about a franchise that has been utterly irrelevant for 30 years. And yet they still get held up like they matter when we can all see from the outside they're utterly incompetent. Incompetent. They can't get the sun out of their receivers' eyes because their owner is an octogenarian who is like Joe Biden laughs at the guy. It's like, I'm not really sure that guy's got his mental capacity
he can still act, Jerry can. You know.
What's that?
He can still act. So
What do you mean act?
He was in Landman.
I was not aware of that.
He had a big scene in Landman. And
it's amazing that he was able to do that.
With John Hamm.
Given how
Billy Bob Thornton.
How clear he is past his ability to competently do anything. And again, I don't say that because I'm trying to be mean. It sucks. We all hate it when our grandparents get to that age where you're like, oh, no. We can't let him drive anymore. Like, we can't. The dude has no idea what he's doing. No clue. And it's just it's naked how the other day like they asked him after the game, would you ever think about not being GM anymore? And he was like, no, I bought this team so I'd have a job.
Well, maybe that's why he's exploring acting now. You know, just
the F. So funny. All right. I don't think there was anything else.
It was a powerful scene that he was in Landman.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was.
Sure, it meant even more if I had been watching the show.
Something along those lines. Hey, if you haven't picked up the best of issue of Press Box yet, go get it right now at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations where you find Press Box. You can read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. This is a very special issue for us. Each and every year on the cover, we recognize our Mogaba Sports Person of the Year. That's Lamar Jackson. You've heard of him. Go get it for free at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of those hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box. Read it all, PressBoxOnline.com. Also inside, we recognize top people, performances, and moments of the year inside that new print issue of Press Box. All right, you want to do a brief version of 5 plays? There really are not 5 plays worth discussing from this football game, and we're going to make the mistake of putting one higher. Some of you are going to make the mistake of putting one higher on the list that absolutely cannot be justified to be. It really can't be justified to be on the list, but I'll just get it out of the way. Michael Pierce's interception is number 5. It can't even be justified at number 5.
I did not put it on my list.
It was 35. The problem is there aren't really great candidates for any of the other spots, so I just decided I could leave it at number 5. The game was over. It did not tell the story of how the Ravens won the football game, but it was cool, and it's the play that we're going to remember if we ever remember if we remember anything about this football game years from now, it's the only thing we're going to remember. So I don't know. I split hairs and just put it at number 5 to recognize that, but no. It can't even be justified at number 5. The game was over. It's just that there weren't really 5 plays that did tell the story of this game. So I just left it there. There it is, number 5.
At number 5, I had I coming in the third quarter. This was I think this was the only second half play I had. The touchdown to Rashad Bateman, the no look touchdown on Rashad Bateman, because it was a great play.
It was cool.
It was cool.
It wasn't really that great of a play.
Yes,
he was wide open.
Exactly. It told the story of the game.
Yeah, I mean, just the Browns are incompetent.
Yes, exactly.
I don't think it told the story.
I was between this play or the first play of the second half. Derrick Henry.
Well, that one made my list.
That one made your list. This one made my list instead of that one.
Was high on my list. Okay.
Maybe I should have both. I had 2 from the same drive earlier as well, and
it's difficult. My number 4 is the first drive of the game for the Cleveland Browns, faced with 4th and 4 from the Baltimore 43-yard line. And instead of, trying to win the game, the Browns just say, the hell with it. And they get 23 yards of field position in the swap. And it's just, it's so cowardly. I get it. The Browns stink, and I don't know if they even wanted to win the game. This is the difficult part of having, everything about discussing that game becomes tough because I don't know if the Browns wanted to win the game or not. The next time they were faced with 4th down, and immediately in that moment, the first thing you would say is, oh, that's their way of saying we're purposely trying to lose this game. That's such a cowardly decision. That's so insane to punt the ball from the 43. Heart of hearts, when the Ravens turned around and did it on the ensuing drive, I also think that's bonkers. I know the argument is much like the Giants game where, hey, you have so little respect for your opponent that why would you ever do anything that might give them a bit of momentum in the game. Fair. It's just that your punter is so bad or so at mid. I mean, bad in context, right? He's better than probably most people that have tried to punt the ball in their lives, but he's just not. There's nothing he does that's special in any way. And so the moment that you punt from the other side of the 50, I'm just going to assume that either it's going to be fair caught at the 12 or it's going to be a touchback. I have seen nothing that suggests that there is any likelihood that he is pinning anyone inside the 7-yard line other than the one play that Tylan Wallace made. That's the one time that I've ever seen it. So, for me, unless you have a special punt, it made sense to send Sam Cook out to punt because you believed you had a weapon. You were like, yeah, the field position isn't great, but we're going to end this with it's going to be a 39-yard swap. If we punt from the 43, he'll be pinned down at the 4. That's where Sam Cook will put the ball out of bounds. And Jordan Stout doesn't do that, and Corey Bajorquez sure as hell. I mean, maybe he's been really good at it, and we just don't know because we don't watch the Browns. My gut tells me no, and it was just cowardly AF. I mean, it was just so insanely cowardly that it made you immediately say, okay, they just don't want to win the game. They're trying to play for, Kevin Stefanski was told, you're going to be around next year, so help us out. Play for draft position. Don't put Jameis out there anymore. Try to lose the games. And then literally the next 4th down they had an opportunity to go for it, they went for it and failed.
Yeah.
On the other side of the field, giving the Ravens great field position. So I have no idea what to make of this decision. It's asinine that they punted 4th and 4 from the Ravens 43. It's insane.
Bajorquez, according to PFF, is the 5th highest graded punter.
All right,
season.
maybe he's really good at it. Yeah. Maybe we just don't know that. But it's still what a cowardly decision.
He leads the NFL in attempts as well, punts.
Well, that part makes sense. That checks out. I get that. Number 4.
I went with the second touchdown of the game. This was the biggest play of the second scoring drive, which, it still felt like, it mattered. They had to put points on the board, and they did just that. Mark Andrews, being a weapon in the red zone, so
nothing
that
special
counts.
about
that counts. It is. Mark Andrews.
Nothing at all.
It was also put Lamar officially over 4,000 yards on the season as well.
For him.
So big play, significant.
This is the worst 5 plays we've ever done. Number 3, Again, at a point where the game became it's crazy to look back because we just never think that the Browns were actually a threat in this game, and that's part of the reason why it's difficult to do 5 plays. It's because you just don't believe it. You're like, well, nothing was ever happening in this game. But then you forget that, like, in the fourth quarter, they got back within 2 scores at 21-10. Like, it did become a football game again at that point. To some extent, right?
Yeah.
Again, qualifying that it was the Browns. If you made it nameless, faceless opponent, it was a football game again in the fourth quarter at 21-10. And the Ravens are faced with 3rd and 8 from their own 32-yard line. And there's a real chance in that moment. You don't convert there. You give the ball back. God knows. But instead, over the middle to Rashad Bateman, 24 yards, got them going. They convert 3rd down. They go on, obviously, to score a touchdown on the drive. So the one moment where there was some doubt in the fourth quarter.
I considered something from that drive. Play. I don't know why. I mean, I guess it's just because there was so little resistance from the Browns, and so that was why I guess I didn't do it. Then at 3 and 2, I went with back-to-back plays here. This was the drive that the Browns did go forward on 4th down in their own territory. Okay. So a big stop on 3rd and 1. Matabike completely just pushed the entire offensive line back. He destroyed that play. And it never had a chance and ended up forcing what proved to be an important 4th down. So that was my 3 play, and then on my second play of the game was that 4th and 1 where they did get a stop because the Browns turned it over in their own territory, as you said, and it was a really big play by Marlon Humphrey jumping the route there and
yeah, I don't mind that one. I don't mind that one being on the list at all. I mean, probably not as high as you have it, but I get it. I mean, my number 2 is the first play of the third quarter. Because it's the play that set the tone for the second half. After Derrick Henry had been completely bottled up in the first half and was doing nothing, everything about the second half was set in one moment. And by the way, again, it's still a game at that point. Like, that's the part it's easy for us to forget because it ended up being, the final score was a laugher. But it was a 14-3 game. When you got the ball back to start the second half, you still had work to do. And the offense wasn't clicking. It was a disjointed Jim Schwartz was doing a number on you. As, a guy from Baltimore probably has a bug up his ass every time he plays the Ravens. I mean, I happen to know that as a fact. He was doing a number on you. And you needed to get going. Something had to start clicking. You had one scoring drive in the first half. And so you needed something. And that play and Derrick Henry getting loose kind of changed everything and then ultimately set the tone for Derrick Henry to overwhelm the Browns in the second half. So, yeah, that was my number 2. But, look, let's be fair. This was a one-play list. There was only one play that actually mattered in this game. One. Like, this was the one play that told the story. And it was the interception return. It was Nate Wiggins. That's it. That's the only play that actually told the story of the Ravens win over the Browns. Everything else was just funsies.
Just trying to think of something clever
there's
that
nothing,
I could throw in. I just couldn't think of it.
There's no tip in there. Because, again, some of the plays that you would suggest as being silly are plays that we would have considered for top 5 because there were so few plays that actually mattered in this game. So, yeah, that's number 1. It's fairly obvious, and we'll get those up at glennclarkradio.com a little bit later on. One of those weeks where, in hindsight, probably could have buried 5 plays. Probably of all the weeks where we actually did the exercise, this definitely could have been a web only or. This is why we got rid of 5 plays.
Right, I know.
This is why 5 plays died a slow death a few years back. Is because we had.
I remember. I think the first game that we did pull it back was the Broncos game, right? And then,
really difficult to tell the story of
a 40-10 or
But
whatever.
at least at that point, it's a good team. It's a game that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
This, you don't even know if the other team was trying. It's impossible to do 5 plays in these scenarios. But that's Griffin wanted it back. He was so desirous.
Well, it felt like we kept referencing it, like every week. Or like if we were always like, if we did 5 plays, this is a play that would show up, and then
annoying.
And then, of course,
All
start
right,
winning games by a lot.
We'll post it at glennclarkradio.com. Tell me about the CIAA tournament, please.
I would love to. Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at the CFG Bank Arena from February 25th to March 1st. Make sure you get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. The Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena, February 25th through March 1st.
John in Little Rock just said, what if I told you that there's a grown man who's on TV down in Arkansas who has a snowmaking machine that he runs in his backyard? This dude, okay,
They get snow in Arkansas, right?
It's apparently.
Yeah.
No, it's weird. That's weird. But in a way, because it's like a novelty, I can kind of get it. Like, you move away from here and you have like nostalgic feelings, and you're like, oh, I miss, like, I'll tell you, when I lived in Arizona for a minute, you were like, I kind of miss seeing snow. Not dealing with it, seeing it.
Oh.
Seeing it. Now, you can look at pictures on the internet.
Yeah, but that's not like seeing
and
it.
in your backyard, fine, right? Like, if he was putting it on the street, if he was putting it on someone's car, well, then jail. Jail. And I mean it. Jail. Like, no debate,
Someone
no
in Arizona,
trial,
someone
no
in Arizona
anything.
wakes up and
Just
someone just
take him to the jail. Leave him there. Literally, snow should be. Apparently, the police were coming through for people that were leaving chairs out yesterday. I got some complicated feelings about that. I really do.
About the chairs,
the chair
or about
thing,
the police, or about
the police. The
Okay.
chair thing. We sometimes need to be allowed to govern ourselves as a society. Truly. And if we shovel out the spot, that's our spot. I really do have some complicated feelings about, like, there need to be like shadow governments set up during these circumstances. If you shovel out a spot, that's your spot. And if someone else takes it, they're an a-hole. And I get that, like, it's different everywhere, but I remember, like, living in an apartment complex. This is always the way we do. We'd shovel out a spot, and then we'd leave a chair there because it was our spot. But we didn't have assigned spots in this apartment complex, so we weren't supposed to do this. But the apartment complex never came through and, like, moved the chairs because they knew better. They understood the world that they were walking into. The cops, because these are the roads, they can do that. They can go move the chair and say, you're not allowed to leave a chair sitting in the middle of a road. And to some extent, I understand why they would believe the law says that, but this is one of those situations where common sense has got to win out, dog. Like, we've got to be, as adult humans, we got to set new parameters. Like, you shovel out a parking spot, that's your parking spot, dog. Like, that's yours. And anybody that doesn't understand that, first of all, if you're the type of person that would park your car in a spot that someone else shoveled out, you should also go to jail. And I mean it. Like, you should. You are a monster. You are the reason why we can't have a functioning society. Now, hey, look, I've looked around. I've taken the temperature. That whole functioning society thing, hanging by a thread. Hanging by a thread. But you do that, you should be in jail. Jail. Like, there should be, not like long term, but we should be able to say, you got to go spend the night in jail. You have to understand the consequences of your actions. If you are a person that would take a parking spot that someone else shoveled out, that you had nothing to do with, I mean, you might say, well, I didn't live here. I couldn't shovel out a parking spot. Then you don't need to be here on a snow day. This is the way it works, man. This is why snow sucks. This is why those of you that root for snow, you don't think about all the ramifications of this. You got like a side piece that lives somewhere where there's no driveway, and you got to park on the street, and you're like, hey, man, I wasn't here the night before, but I want to come see my side piece. Got to get in there. No. Gonna have to wait. Hope that they're sticking around till the snow goes away. That's the way it's going to be, man. If you didn't shovel out a spot, nope, not allowed here. Period. Plain and simple. Shouldn't be all that complicated.
You found your winning argument. Well done.
Dog, it's really not that hard. If you use your brain, you're going to have to wait. Sorry. Now, you might say, I got a sick mom. Okay, that's compelling. You know it was going to snow. Go over and shovel out a spot before. Protect your spot. Whatever you got to do. Sucks, man. Snow sucks. Period. Sucks. And if the cops really were, if they really were driving through and just moving peoples, then I appreciate all the fine work that you do and appreciate your bravery, but not okay. In some circumstances, we have to be able to govern ourselves. We have to be able to govern certain things. And parking spots in snow is one thing that we've got to have the option to govern. We've got to be allowed to, because we will fall apart as a society otherwise. If we can't do that, then we can't have anything. If it can't be that we all have the respect for this person shoveled out this spot, it's their spot, we fall apart as a society. This is the show that I feel like I was born to do. Don't care about this. We'll talk about sports. I don't really want to talk about Maryland basketball, but we will. Patrick Stevens will join us next. Tell us about what the reality is of Maryland's 0-for trip out the Pacific Northwest. That we'll do when we come back in. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry. Protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from driveeasymd.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. There, you just saved money with Easy Pass, all without slowing or receiving a notice in the mail. Well done, thrifty driver, well done. Get your Easy Pass at driveeasymd.com.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCR. I guess when we were going over the news today, we should have included the news that Todd Monken is going to interview with the Bears for their head coaching vacancy, and I want to be the first to remind the Bears, the guy abandoned the run in the AFC Championship game, man. What are you doing? How could you you can't hire that guy?
Well, the Bears don't have a run game, so it's...
I'm doing the bit where I would prefer that Todd Monken stick around. It's worked pretty well here, so I'm trying to dissuade them. But thank you for that. Appreciate the dynamite tipping. Yeah, Todd Monken. Apparently, the Bears did request an interview with the Ravens' offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, and so I think the likelihood is that they'll do a virtual thing this week, and then they'll go from there. Where Todd Monken is on the Bears list, no idea. They want to interview Mike McCarthy, too. I have no idea. And no other reports of teams looking to interview Todd Monken that I read yesterday, but that could change at any point. Who knows? So that was one that we probably should have spent a little bit more time with, as that could impact the Ravens. All right, it's Tuesday, and every Tuesday we talk some college hoops with our next guest, of course, the Washington Post, as well as USA Lacrosse Magazine, Blue Ribbon, and you follow him on Blue Sky at Discourse D1S Course. He is our friend Patrick Stevens. Patrick, good morning. I hope everything was you made it safely to Coppin last night. Appreciate you taking the time for us.
Yes, a little bit of an adventure over the river and through the woods and whatnot. But actually, I was actually surprised that the roads were not all that bad. So good job by a lot of people in this area, especially on campus too, to have things as clear as they did last night.
Patrick, obviously we start with a lost week for the University of Maryland out in the Pacific Northwest, and I acknowledge that's going to be a difficult trip for a lot of people to make, and I don't think it's worth overreacting or suggesting that Maryland is fraudulent or anything along those lines, but particularly that loss to Washington feels like it could be a bit costly in terms of some of the bigger goals that maybe this team was perhaps looking at later down the road.
Yeah, both in terms of, contending for a league title and also the chances of, that might be a loss that ultimately hurts you a little bit. I'm going to guess that ends up as a quad 2 loss ultimately, but there's a long way to go before that, right? So if I had told you that Maryland was going to go out west and get outscored by 10 points, that wouldn't be all that shocking. Like in a different world where they play as well against Oregon as they, or they played the game that they played against Oregon against Washington,
right?
And they played the game they played against Washington against Oregon. They might get outscored by more, but have a split to show for.
Mm-hmm.
So I just that's hard travel. And on the same subject, like you look at what's coming up on Friday. UCLA played at Nebraska on Saturday, had to go back to LA. They're playing Michigan tonight, and then they're going to fly east to play Maryland on Friday. I mean,
very sensible.
They're basically getting scheduled into a loss there by the conference. But hey, UCLA got all the football money, right? That's all that really matters.
That's true.
But that's to me that's just part of life with these supersized continent-spanning conferences. And so I think if you look at that Oregon game, like they played pretty well in that game. I think there's no doubt that they did not play well out at Washington, and Jacoby Gillespie had basically his only bad game of the season to this point, and Derek Queen wasn't very good. So, you're probably not going to have many nights where both of those guys aren't very good. So I do think there is a little bit of an onus here on this next 4-game stretch, and I'm sure you want to get into that. Just, at 1-3 in the league, it's time to get going.
It's critical, right? Like this, you can't. I said it this way: you can't use words like "must win" because those words have to have meaning, and you can't say that any game on January 10th is a must win because of it. But it feels like it's something in that neighborhood, given a 1-3 start in league play. Again, if you want to put yourself in good position like this on Friday night, and to your point, like obviously you have a huge advantage given the travel for UCLA, but it feels critical. Whatever word you want to use, it feels like this is incredibly important to win this game.
Yeah, I mean 1-4 is a lot more daunting than 2-3, right?
Yeah.
I think also what you're kind of alluding to. I'll kind of lay it out a little more barely. Like, do you think you're a team that's capable of being a 4 seed and making the second weekend of the tournament?
Yeah.
Or do you think you're going to be a 9 seed and just flame out by the second round?
Yep.
I mean, that's sort of the question you're asking.
Yep.
And frankly, these next 4 games are the sort of games that eventual 3 or 4 or 5 seed is going to go out and win. You should beat UCLA given those conditions that we talked about. You should beat Minnesota, and I don't know if you caught the overtime of their game against Ohio State last night, but heavens, it's hard to lose a game more agonizingly than Minnesota did last night. And then, basically, long story short, they were up 2, and a kid thought they were up 3 and fouled with 5 seconds left in double overtime. Yeah, or in the first overtime. So Ohio State made 2 free throws.
No.
Yeah, it was the reaction shot from the coach on the bench jumping up and down is something to see. They go to Northwestern and then come home for Nebraska. Like those are 4 games that you realistically can win. You're not necessarily going to win them all, but you probably ought to come out of that stretch 3-1 and sit there at 500 in the league. And even then, like that's still, you're almost halfway through league play and you're at 500.
Right.
So Like there's a lot at stake here in that 4 games in 10 days. Again, the Big Ten with the compressed schedule and making sure they're on TV every night. Not a lot of fun. But if you're Maryland, this is a stretch that elevates you or reduces you in terms of what tier you're going to probably be in the rest of it.
You mentioned, Dairy Queen obviously had a really rough game at Washington, and then kind of a mixed bag. I mean, he was certainly better against Oregon, but that's a low bar. Is it fair to just say, like, this still is, as talented as he is, as high as our expectations are, there still has to be a reminder that he is a freshman, and like this still exists, even though we've gotten to an era of college basketball where we just believe you step in as a freshman and you're the best player in the country.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was not good against Washington. Let's be clear. He was also going up against a really good player in Osabor, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, you're not as much as we're sitting here going, Washington's not that great. Well, the guy named Great is actually pretty great. So.
They paid an awful lot of money to have that dude there.
So, and then, I thought that for him against Oregon, that was probably about what you would want to see from somebody like that. 17-5, maybe a little bit more of a presence on the glass, but you know what? There weren't a ton of rebounds to go around in that game. Just the way that both teams were scoring. So, I think for Queen, that's a guy that ultimately, he is a freshman, and he's not going to be great against everybody. And I thought the impressive part of the first couple months of the season was that he basically showed up every time they had a real opponent. His stinkers, if you wanted to call them that, he certainly didn't play great against Mount St. Mary's, for example. It was quiet against Florida A&M. I mean, we were talking about games where they could more than survive without him having a monster day. So I'm certainly not disappointed in what he's given them so far, but I do think that as the season goes along, that they'll certainly need him to be a more consistent player, and not that he hasn't been, but that's something that they'll have to count on, I think, at the end of the year. He
is Patrick Stevens. He's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Towson splits games on the road at Wilmington and Charleston. I don't know. Given where the bar had been, is it even encouraging that they just got the win at Wilmington?
That trip in particular, that's a win.
Yeah.
I think if you're staring at having to go play two of the best programs in the league on the road, and not just that, but those are the only 2 times you're going to see them this season. So to catch them when you're not necessarily playing all that great, and you get a split, and they weren't, Charleston was better than them, but it wasn't like it was an obnoxious blowout or anything.
Right.
So you take that split and you move along. Because you're not going to have a single weekend that is as challenging as that the rest of the way. You're just not. So I do think if you're Towson, you're happy with that. And now you move along and you try to start stacking victories beginning Thursday at home against Northeastern.
I happened to I actually spent a lot of time watching local hoops this weekend because I watched a good bit of UMBC Binghamton, and that was really disappointing because UMBC was playing really well on the road against a team that they should have beat, and then it just kind of came unglued in the final minutes.
Well, I mean, the story for UMBC is that they can score with anybody and can make things interesting, but they can also, they're also bound to have some, defensive let up as well. I mean, they're not a great defensive team, and some of that is simply a function of their size or lack thereof. But I think when you look at what Binghamton was able to do to them, it wasn't anything fancy. It was just simply funneling it inside, and the Walsh kid had a really good game with 18 and 17. Gavin Walsh, and they had 5 guys in double figures. They shot 60% from 2. Not that UMBC was bad. They shot 63% from 2. But at the end of the day, you got to get stops, and I think for UMBC, that's the big question as they delve deeper into American East play. I know we talked about last week how the schedule set them up to get off to a reasonably favorable start. They play what I think are the 2 worst teams in the league in NJIT and New Hampshire. They're certainly the 2 lowest in the KenPom rankings by a fair bit. So I think there's an opportunity there for them to recover here in their next 2 games before Maine comes to town. But yeah, I would agree that was certainly a lost opportunity for UMBC on Saturday.
And then I don't want to overreact that Loyola beat Lehigh at home because, that's a middle-of-the-road team. But, you got to win games at some point. And Jordan Steinke picked a nice day for to have a career day. That seemed like a positive for Loyola on Sunday.
And they played Holy Cross tough on the road earlier in the week.
Yeah.
So, they got the same split that 7 other Patriot League teams got. And by the way, home teams are now 10-0 in Patriot League play early this season.
How about that?
So Loyola has been part of that consistent element there. So I think like you said, Stemke, a guy that it kind of comes and goes, but when he comes, he's awfully good.
Yeah.
So you think about him. I think also you look at the fact that they were able to deal with Lehigh's guards having a pretty good day. 10 of 24 from 3. This was if Loyola was a team that's supposed to be a little vulnerable inside. It was Stemke driving and Milos Ilic doing some work inside as well that was able to allow them to control the interior in this game. So I think if you're Loyola, you take some good things away from it, not simply just that you won, but the way that you won. So I think that it's 6-7 overall opening split. Loyola's not in bad shape compared to what we probably thought they were going to be, and now they're just one win away from matching their total from all last year.
That's the progress, I guess, is what you would call that in the first year under Josh Loeffler. On the national front, I just like Florida, Tennessee is coming up tonight. Boy, Florida is such a wild team to watch, right? Like, dude, they shoot, they score, they get offensive rebounds. I know that maybe some people would say they shoot too many threes and it reminds them a little bit too much of NBA basketball, but there is something aesthetically pleasing about watching Florida basketball to me.
Well, if you turn on a game and you have a pretty good idea that somebody's going to reach 80 points, which they've done in all but one game this season, you're signing up for something kind of fun. And you certainly look at the last handful of games where they're been in the 70s possession wise. That's a fun brand of basketball. So they actually defend reasonably well based on the possession total. Now they didn't defend great against Kentucky the other day, but that was just a delightful game in general, right? I mean, you don't necessarily want 106 to 100 every single time you turn on a game,
right.
but you like a few of those throughout the season. So it's a great contrast with them and Tennessee. You look at the KenPom numbers, Florida number 3 nationally in offense, Tennessee number 2 nationally in defense. Both are pretty good on the other ends of the floor too, but that'll be one of the great contrasts, and certainly looking forward to catching as much of that game as I can tonight.
I don't know if you even have any thought. Do you have any thought about this story about the 5-year thing? Because it's crazy. Like, when I first heard it, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But then I thought about it and said, if you're getting rid of red shirts, if you're just saying you got 5 years, and whatever you do, you're doing it all within a 5-year span, and then we're done, then I would listen to that. Like, that we get rid of these 7th, 8th year guys, or the idea of in football guys leaving after 3 games to protect a red shirt. Like, I maybe it sounded crazy when I first heard it, but if it was done right, then I feel like there would actually be some value to it.
Well, it's not that much different than what football has right now, right? You have 5 years and you can play in up to 4 games. So you're essentially tweaking that last part of it, right? That's essentially what you're talking about.
I'm saying if you did it where you couldn't try to take advantage of it with the 4-game thing. Like, that if you play...
Yeah, where it's just a strict 5 years.
Yeah,
I mean, for years, the idea, the rules from the before times, where it was you had 5 years to play. You had 5 years to play 4 years.
Right.
You could get medical hardship waivers, and the only 2 things that could sort of pause the clock for you was military service or a religious mission. So kind of the BYU carve out type of thing. So if what you're basically saying is do that except 5 years
5 instead of
4. Play 5 seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, I think anything that simplifies things at this point would be better. And let's face it, what we've learned over the last few years is there's some guys that have recognized now that they can legally be paid, that there's more money for them playing in college for a 5th season than there ever could be in their pro career. Maybe they're a 6'8" man basically that doesn't have much of a pro future, but is great at the college level. Why not?
Yep.
And if it basically streamlines things, that probably helps a lot of other people out too.
Yep, that's the way that I felt about it after I thought about it a little bit more. All right, let's play our game. Can Patrick Stevens name the MLB teams that this particular player has played for or managed? I would tell you that the manager that I have, maybe I just don't know that his career. As a player, I think this might be ball busting to remember the teams that he played for. But we'll see how it goes. There were 3 teams that he managed, and one of them he also played for. 5 teams that he played for, so we're looking for a total of 7 teams.
Okay.
Bobby Valentine.
Bobby Valentine. That is a ball.
I thought it was. I was afraid of that. And if we want to tap, we can tap and just do the play.
No. Well, let's start with the managerial thing. He was in Texas for sure.
Of course.
He was with the Mets, and he was with Boston.
3 for 3. And the Mets he also played for from 77 and 78.
Okay. Bobby Valentine as a player. Dodgers, right?
He was a Dodger. Yes, correct. That's where he started his career.
I was going to say, I thought that was kind of like the sort of basis of it all, right?
Yep.
So, after this, it does get a little dicey. Was he in Oakland?
No, not in Oakland.
And how about Seattle?
Seattle is where he wrapped up his career in 1979. Well done.
Okay.
You want one more guess? Yeah. Okay. All right.
No, I'm out of guesses now.
The goofy part is if you would have just stuck to the West Coast, the rest of it Seattle.
The Angels. He was an Angel.
He was an Angel. Yep, and he was a Padre. That was where.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you thought you only had one left. Yeah, that's what I was figuring.
I thought I only had one left there. That's my bad.
All good. That happens. All right, a little bit more modern for our players. We begin with someone who is still active. 5 teams, 2-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner, Starling Marte.
Starling Marte, definitely a Pirate.
Of course.
Definitely a Met.
Yep, currently.
And, it's funny. Like, I think the rest of them are all just kind of crammed.
They are crammed into 2 years, yes. 3 teams in 2 years.
3 teams in 2 years for Starling Marte.
Yeah.
Gosh. Let's see. Starling Marte, am I remembering him as a Brave at all?
No, not as a Brave. Damn.
No, this isn't going to go very well, I don't think.
All right.
That's okay. Was he a Cub?
No, not a Cub. Wow.
Yeah.
You know what?
Kind of lost track.
Here's what I'll give you, because one of these years is the pandemic year.
No, don't give me anything here.
Well, okay, I'm not going to give it to you, but I was just going to say I'll give you a pass because one of the years is the pandemic year, and remember anything about that year is
anything. Yeah, I mean, Oakland maybe.
Oakland is yes, you got that one. Okay. Oakland in 2021. In the pandemic year, he was a Diamondback, so I guess they had both Martes.
Can I try to help? Was he a Marlin?
He was a Marlin as well for a minute.
He was a Marlin. That's right.
All right, let's clean it up nicely. 4 teams, including he just obviously re-signed for Teoscar Hernandez.
Teoscar has Toronto?
Of course.
And Seattle?
Yep.
And obviously the Dodgers?
Yep.
And then it's basically where he started,
Correct.
Right? Houston,
yeah,
right?
That's exactly right. 4 for 4 in Teoscar Hernandez. What's the schedule look like for you this week, sir?
Well, I'm going to take advantage of the postponement and catch Morgan State this afternoon.
There you go. 4 o'clock this afternoon.
4 o'clock over at Hillfield House against NC Central.
I have a meeting today. Maybe I'll call you. That's not impossible. I'll call you about that one. I might be able to join today. It's possible.
And then tomorrow, Richmond, George Mason, Northeastern Towson on Thursday, Maryland, UCLA Friday, Georgetown, UConn Saturday, Mount St. Mary's Sacred Heart Sunday, and then Maryland, Minnesota on Monday.
Very good. At Discourse, D1S Course on Blue Sky is how you follow him. Patrick, always appreciate you, sir. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday, all right?
Awesome. Thanks so much, Glenn.
Patrick Stevens with us here on GCR as he has every Tuesday talking college sports. Yeah, I've really talked myself in. They still just haven't given us any more details about that 5-year thing that came up last Friday, that report from John Rothstein. Like, if it's 5 years and all of the caveats stay in place, then no. No. Now you're talking about 10-year guys. Like, I'm out. But if it's 5 years and they're just telling you, dude, we're not doing any of the nonsense anymore, it's it's all you got 5 years. If you want to throw a year in there where you start somewhere and finish somewhere else, that's your call. Do whatever you want to do. But we're not doing any of the nonsense. Those things are over. So we'll see, and hopefully we'll get some more details about that if the NCAA really is pushing towards it. Into hour number 2 of today's program, and joining us right now, obviously a little bit of concern about Zay Flowers, and the word in some of the reporting was a sprain. John Harbaugh wouldn't confirm that. Doesn't feel great going towards Saturday, but let's find out a little bit more. Joining us now, former Chargers team doctor, you know him, SIC Score, and at Pro Football Doc on Twitter. He is our friend, Dr. David Chao, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Doc, it's Glenn. It's always great to catch up, and I mean it this time because at least we're not talking about something that's like truly devastating and one of those where you're the bearer of really bad news. This one seems to be not quite as bad, so it's maybe not that bad to have to talk to you today.
Well, yeah, I don't like being the Grim Reaper here, and so thanks for not putting me in that position. But look, I'm on the outside looking in. You know the deal, doing video analysis and using my NFL team position experience.
Yep.
I'm not dealing in insider information. It's more insider knowledge. But I hope to say a little more than your head coach did. He has not been very talkative.
No. He's definitely into playoff mode. There's no question about that. A lot of yeses during the press conference yesterday.
Yeah, I found that amusing, but he's doing his job. Good for him.
Look, man, it's playoff week. This is the way it goes now. We're not volunteering anything we don't have to volunteer. That's the way that it works. Doc, when you saw it immediately, and I of course follow you on Twitter, so it seemed like quickly you recognized this was not a very significant injury. Can you kind of take us through? Does a sprain make the most sense to you?
It does, and thank you for following on Twitter or X. And look, it's just video and garbage in, garbage out, good info in, good info out. And the early video I saw, I was very optimistic. It wasn't a major injury. It wasn't like he tore his ACL. As a matter of fact, all his steps on the ground were good. It was after he fell to the ground that the injury happened. And initially, I did feel it was actually a pure contusion. But later on, there was another angle. I don't know if it's whether the staff got it to me or TV showed the other angle. But it did look like his right foot was caught as his inside of his knee leg was hit, thereby spraining his knee, the ligaments on the outside of his knee. It's not a full tear. It's not surgical. But I sort of was super optimistic in the beginning. It was just a contusion. And I had to downgrade a little bit that there was a knee sprain of the lateral ligaments. But it's not surgical. It's not season ending. But then again, there's not much of the season left.
So, yeah, that's I think the next follow-up is what would the timeline be if that's the case? Like, it seems like the reporting has made it seem like Saturday feels not likely. But does that sound about right to you?
It does. And, once again, I don't know John Harbaugh. I know his brother very well. They're probably very happy, both of them, not to be playing each other this week. That's a good thing. But, it's coach is doing his job. When he says yes, no to his answers, he's focused in on the playoffs. There's coach speak. What did he say in the press conference? Basically, he's day-to-day, but he's unlikely this week. Isn't that kind of week to week?
Right.
It's
right.
Coach speak, right? And it's his job. I'm not banging on him to do this, but week to week is about right. I think at this point in time, if I were to put it into football parlance, Zay Jones's chance to play this week is about that of a Hail Mary. I wouldn't say impossible, but doesn't seem very likely. His chance next week might be that of a team that needs, 2 minutes or a minute left, needs a game-tying touchdown and a 2-point conversion. Not impossible, but odds maybe not in your favor. If we can get to the conference championship round, I think it becomes a minute left and try and get a field goal to send it to overtime. It seems something that might be doable. And, I don't think the season is done as long as the Ravens stay alive.
He is Dr. David Chao. He's with us here on GCR. Doc, can you explain that? Because a lot of people, whenever they hear any injury, they're just like, oh, well, couldn't somebody just, like, take a shot and then go play through the pain or something like that? Can you explain what a sprain actually does to limit you in a situation like this, and what it is that you'll be looking for as far as when he could be back on the field?
A sprain is an injury to ligaments, and a sprain is a tear. Partial tear. It's not surgery, but there are fibers that are disrupted, and the question is, how bad is it? And given the position that he plays, speedy and cutting, it makes it more difficult. Look, if he were an offensive lineman, he'd have a better chance to put a brace on it and try and return to play earlier. But let's be serious, how effective can Zay Jones be if he has to wear a knee brace, right? So the hope is that he won't need to. And it's the analysis we do is always not only injury specific, which ligament specific, degree of sprain, but also the position they play. And that's what factors into all of this.
Is there any world where, you hear this particularly with wide receivers over the years and they deal with injuries, well, you could at least have him out there to be a decoy, right? Like you hear that phrase thrown around. Is that... I know that's a strategy thing beyond just an injury thing, but is that even an option in a situation? Like, hey, well, at least be good to have him out there as like a threat, even if he's not legitimately 100%.
Well, this is where, it becomes a coaching decision as well as player decision in terms of how effective he feels like he can be. And where the medical staff weighs in is what's the chance of re-injury or making it worse.
Right.
The last thing you want to do is turn this into something surgical. But look, return to play is not binary. It's not like you wait till players are 100%. At this point in the season, late in the season, 85% healthy is a good week. And with playoffs, of course, there's added pressure. People want to play. Zay Jones wants to play. Everyone wants to play for their team at this point in time. So I don't know that he needs to get to 100%, but, he's got to get to a certain point where he isn't going to injure himself and at least can have some effectiveness to be a threat. If he's out there limping around, what good really is he as a decoy? Anyway, so I'm not saying he needs to be 100%, but he's got to be closer to at least 80, 85 to be able to give it a try and a chance. And I doubt that they'll wait till he's 100% to play him because he's such a weapon and a force.
No question. He's a Pro Bowl wide receiver, and obviously you're playing the most important games of your season. And I'm sure that's a factor for him, too. Can you just, generically talk us a little bit more through the line between the medical staff and the player and how that decision is made? Because to that point, I would have no doubt that if you're Zay Flowers, like, you want, come hell or high water, I want to be out there, and this is the playoffs, and I want to win a Super Bowl. Like, what is that decision-making like between a player and the medical staff, particularly at this point in the season?
Well, decisions at this point of the season, like any point of the season, the decision is made by what I would call a three-headed monster, all right? And the three-headed monster is the player, medical, and the team itself. The player, his family, his agent, his whatever, his fitness, his feeling of whether he can play or not, his desire to play. Medical, what are the risks of playing? What are the risks of setback? What are the risks of permanent damage? And the team, is it smarter to wait another week? Or is 80% or 75% worth the risk this week given the matchups and the situation? So it has to be a unanimous yes for any player to play. The player has to want to, medical has to say it's reasonable, and the team has to agree. Look at, different situations around the league. Sometimes the player wants to, medical says okay, and the team, and I'm not saying this is the case for the Ravens, contractually, look at Daniel Jones or whatever, shuts him down, right, for injury protection, right? That's an extreme example that does not apply here. But look, if Zay Jones wants to play, and undoubtedly he does, and John Harbaugh and company want him to play, but medical says it's unsafe, he's not playing. If medical says he can play, Zay Jones wants to play, but John Harbaugh says, there's no use playing him at 75%, using him a decoy, risking a setback. We'll get through the wild card round. We need him for the divisional round. Then he sits, right? So there's a lot of things that go into the decision making, but it has to be a three-way yes, yes, yes for someone to play. There's veto power from any of those three entities.
All right, Doc, before we let you go, if I could, just because this kind of blew my mind, I was not aware that this is something that he had said in an interview in December. So when I was watching Sunday Night Football and they cut to the sideline and Aiden Hutchinson's down there and the report is, oh, he's telling everybody that if they make it to the Super Bowl, he's going to be back, I'm flabbergasted. I'm like, what? Like, are you – that was one of the most devastating-looking injuries that I've ever seen. Like, is it at all plausible that if somehow the Detroit Lions are in the Super Bowl, that Aiden Hutchinson could actually be playing in the Super Bowl?
It was actually more plausible that Aaron Rodgers last year would come back for the Jets if they were still in it than Aiden Hutchinson playing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Is it impossible for Aiden Hutchinson to play in the Super Bowl? I guess it's not impossible. You see him walking around on the sideline. It is impossible for Aiden Hutchinson to be Aiden Hutchinson and the edge rusher and force that he is/was in the Super Bowl. The fracture may indeed be healed enough at that point in time. But you have to understand, it's not just about the fracture healing. It's about the associated damage. When he breaks his leg and it's wobbling, it's not the only damage is not just the bone. The analogy I'll give you is perhaps if a pipe breaks in your house, you call the plumber for an emergency and fixes the pipe and restores the water. Is your house all good? No. What about all the water damage to the floor and the walls and the rug and the furniture and everything else? There's the associated soft tissue damage. How long before your kitchen or your house is really back in full order the way that you want it to be? It's not just when the pipe is fixed. There's a lot more going on. And, you know, it was great to see him running on an underground, the water treadmill a few weeks ago or a while ago. But that was expected, partial weight bearing. That is running in water, which is part of rehab. That's not walking on water, and there are just human limits. I just don't see it. I would love to see it, but I just don't see it.
At Pro Football Doc is how you follow him. He can't walk on water either, for what it's worth. Not an option. SICscore.com. Doc, is there anything else that we can plug for you?
Yeah, you know, we've been pretty good. You know, we've used our injury analysis. It's been pretty good the end of the season. We even had a perfect Sunday because there's so many injuries and so many players sitting. We give that information. And last year at Sports Injury Central, we were 4-0 on spreads in the wild card round. Usually in the wild card round, there are some health injury mismatches, and you can go to Sports Injury Central, SICscore.com to see all of that.
Awesome. Doc, always appreciate you, man. Thank you for taking the time for us. Hopefully we will not have to talk to you in the coming weeks, but we always appreciate you making yourself available to us.
All right, thank you.
That's Dr. David Chao, of course, former Chargers team doctor with us here on GCR. And, yeah, you know, saying it would be a Hail Mary for him to play on Saturday. It has certainly felt like the more reporting there's been, the less likelihood you believe that Zay Flowers can be on the field, which would stink. There's no way around that. That would stink. But as we talked about yesterday, like I do think the Ravens, particularly uniquely in this matchup, have the depth to be able to withstand it. I think it's a lot more critical, the possibility of him being out there for a playoff game in Buffalo, should the Ravens get there, and obviously should the Bills be there. But I don't want to be dismissive of it either. It's you're missing a massive to pretend like there's not a massive impact. It's a massive impact. But the Ravens showed a year ago that they could win football games against good teams, like without Mark Andrews, for example. And they didn't have Derrick Henry then. So, you know, hopefully they are able to withstand, and hopefully, again, it is as quick as possible for Zay Flowers to get back out on the field. All right, when we come back in, Jeffri Chadiha, NFL.com, NFL Network. We're gonna have to duke it out, man. We're taking the gloves off. We disagree, and we will disagree amicably is what we'll do. Today's show also brought to you by your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com, proud sponsors of County Sports Zone. Obviously, a lot of postponements, cancellations this week. Find out everything, schedule adjustments that you need to know in high school sports here in the state of Maryland by going to countysports.zone. That's countysports.zone, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. Learn more at DriveEasyMD.com.
Pressbox's Project Game Day is the place to be after every game this season. Join Glenn Clark, Rita Hubbard, Super Bowl 35 champion Femi Ayanbadejo, and our cast of regulars as they break down what happened, why it mattered, and what it means moving forward. You can watch the show at PressBoxOnline.com/GameDay or Pressbox's Facebook and YouTube pages. Project Game Day is brought to you by the Green Turtle Sportsbook in Towson and Canton, Easy Pass, and HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. So join us for Project Game Day after every game day this football season at PressBoxOnline.com/GameDay.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry, protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
All right, back in here on GCR. Tuesday edition of the program. I haven't even really felt any. You know what's really crazy? And maybe this is a problem. I haven't even felt like Steelers week juice. I haven't. Not the way that I felt the 2 weeks they played in the regular season. And I was trying to think about how I felt like in 2014, the last time the Ravens played the Steelers in the playoffs. Like the year they played in the AFC Championship game, I mean, for Christ's sake, it's the AFC Championship game, right? Like, my God. In 2014, I still think the having never beaten the Steelers in the playoffs, like that added something to that game. Like it added something that you got to rewrite history. You got to. I don't know. I'm just not feeling like more. I expected there would be more juice this week because it's the Steelers than if it had been like the Chargers, for example. And I'm kind of not. And it might just be the nature of this is where the Ravens find themselves. That it's sort of like, hey, wake me up when it's the championship game. Maybe if it is Buffalo next week because it's Lamar versus Josh Allen.
You think the spread is like anything to do with this? Or?
No. I mean, I don't think the spread uniquely, but if you want to say like there's a confidence that perhaps exists that like this isn't a typical Ravens-Steelers game. This is like the Ravens are notably better than the Steelers. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. I thought that there would be more juice based on the fact that it is another game against the Steelers. And maybe if the Ravens had like lost their second game against the Steelers, then the need to I don't know. I'm just not. If it was Ben Roethlisberger, if it was that Steelers, it would probably be different. But it's Russell Wilson. Like it's not really a Steeler. Like he's just the guy that's playing quarterback for the Steelers. There's not really a whole lot of juice there. It doesn't feel like it in that way. I don't know. Just haven't felt it the way that I would have expected to feel it this week. Our next guest, who everybody knows is one of my favorites. I love this guy, but I think he's wrong, and that's okay. We can agreeably disagree. He's a friend of ours, someone we've talked to a lot over the years. Of course, NFL.com, NFL Network. Our buddy, Mr. Jeffri Chadiha, is with us here on GCR. Jeff, it's Glenn. I just want to make sure you know. You know I love you, and I'm not really trying to fight with you, right?
Oh, yeah.
All
no,
right.
we're like brothers.
Now let me tell you how you're terribly wrong. You're so wrong. You're insane. No. So Jeff wrote at NFL.com this week about the odds, the likelihood of each team that's in the playoffs winning the Super Bowl. And Jeff, here's my issue, right? For the most part, I don't really care. I actually just think it's crazy that you have anybody besides the Kansas City Chiefs as number one. Like, I think that's nuts. And I know that you're down there, and I understand. The Chiefs, no team has ever been like this. That they are never going to conspire with you. They are not going to help you in any way. And with them being the number one seed, again, if like Buffalo was the one seed, I could maybe listen to the argument. But like the idea that you got to go to Kansas, I just can't. Could somebody beat them? Of course. I cannot expect anyone to beat them in Kansas City in the playoffs until someone goes and beats them in Kansas City in the playoffs. That's just where I am.
Well, and I can understand that. That's why you do what you do for a living, and why I do what I do for a living.
Yeah.
I'm just joking with you. Look, I understand the desire to place them, the Chiefs number one. I just don't think they've been the best team in the league all year. And I take it on a year-by-year basis. I never try to throw in what happened last year, the year before, because teams change, circumstances change. And when you really look at this Chiefs team, they're probably relying on 6 or 7 guys who weren't there last year. And their defense is not what it was last year when it came to Baltimore and won that game against the Ravens. And their offense, if you're really being honest, is probably not as good as Baltimore, not as good as Buffalo, not as good as Minnesota, not as good as Detroit, not as good as Philadelphia. And maybe you have an argument with the Packers if Jordan Love is healthy and Christian Watson's healthy. And so I look at all those things, and I also say the Buffalo Bills beat them. They're my number one team, obviously, and they beat the Lions, the 2 top seeds. And so records aside, and if the Chiefs were sitting there at 13-4 or 12-5, I think you'd be having a different conversation. But I also believe they'd be the most dangerous team because they obviously are the champions. You've got to beat them. But I don't think that I think I've seen more impressive teams this year. That's what I went off when I ranked those teams for the playoffs.
So, it's interesting to me. I can hear some of what you're saying, Jeff, but I would still say I actually have, based on what they did the last couple of weeks, I strangely have more fear of the Chiefs than I did a year ago, simply because of the pass catcher department being wider than it was. Like a year ago, they were relying on Kadarius Toney. I know Rashee Rice looked great last year in the playoffs. I definitely understand that, but like they have like 5 legitimate pass catchers now with the way that Gray's developed this season and DeAndre Hopkins and adding Hollywood Brown back into the mix. I actually am a little bit more concerned about this offense this year than I was about their offense a year ago when it came to Baltimore.
Yeah, and my argument for that is, one, you need time to throw the football, and they've got legitimate issues at tackle still. They've been able to mitigate that with throwing the ball faster and by, calling different plays. But moving Joe Thuney from left guard to left tackle has really hurt their run game. If you really follow what they've done since that's happened, their run game has gone south, and that's a big part of why they were being successful earlier. I think Hollywood Brown's overrated, I'll be honest with you. I think Xavier Worthy, they've been able to scheme him open and do some things that can be taken away. And I think DeAndre Hopkins, when he's played against better competition like a Patrick Surtain or the Bills, like his numbers have gone down precipitously. I mean, I think he had like 2 catches against both teams. And Travis Kelce is is older. And so I agree that they've got good names, but again, if you really watch them and you really see how they're moving the football, it's a lot of short passes, maybe a deep shot here or there. I just don't know if they can keep up with a team like Baltimore or Buffalo if those teams really get going and score a lot of points.
All right, let's get to the real fight. There's just no way that Buffalo can be 1 and Baltimore can be 6. There's no way there can be that much of a difference between those two teams. And I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek, but like I do kind of feel I get that Buffalo beat Kansas City and Detroit. And I give them a lot of credit for that because it's the best combination of 2 wins that any team has in the NFL this season. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. And part of it is, like, having watched Buffalo against Baltimore, like, they got demolished in that game. It wasn't like they've had, they'd had a stinker, like a real stinker where they were non-competitive and it was a bad matchup. And I haven't seen the Ravens do that, even though they did lose 5 games, and I acknowledge that. Like, it just doesn't feel like there can be – I would assume that if that game is in Buffalo next weekend, and I get that both teams have to win in order to get there, but, like, the spread can only – it just feels like those teams are way closer than it looks like you have them when you actually look at what they're doing on paper.
Well, I would agree with that. Like, if it was just the AFC teams, then, yeah, it would probably be Buffalo. I actually really had a tough time not putting Baltimore ahead of Kansas City, to be honest with you. And the only reason I did was because the difference in records and the difference in quarterbacks. But, I certainly think, look, it's not a knock on Baltimore to say that they're the 6th team in my ranking. I think that's more of a testament to how tough this league is right now with the postseason starting. I certainly feel if you put it this way, if it was a grading scale versus a actual 1, 2, 3, 4 type scale, Baltimore would certainly be in the same vicinity as the Chiefs and the Ravens. I'd say all 3 of those teams would be probably a 95, 94, 93. I don't think there's a huge separation between them. The teams that, to give you a sense of how I looked at it, I think Buffalo is the best team because they beat the Lions and the Chiefs. I think the Eagles have the best talent in football, the best roster, and they've won 12 of their last 13 games. Only game they lost was Hurts got hurt. So they've been on a 13-game win streak. The Chiefs got there because 15-1, the quarterback, the coach. The Lions got there on the strength of being the top seed in the NFC. And then I thought Minnesota and Detroit were pretty tight. And so that's the only reason the Ravens are where they are. But I think there's 7 teams that could win it all, and the Ravens certainly are one of those teams.
Jeffri Chadiha is with us here on GCR. Jeff, it's funny you bring up, like, I don't know what to make of the Vikings, right? Like, I feel like by their record we have to, but every time I've watched them, I find myself saying, I don't think Sam Darnold's really as good as the rest of you guys. And I know he was dreadful on Sunday night, and so I think there are more people that are talking about that. But I don't know. I have looked at them like a team that in the NFC can win a ton of games, and I'm not sure that they're really a team as good as their defense is. Their offensive line obviously got sort of exposed on Sunday night. I don't know how. I really don't. I know we have to give them credit because of their record, but I still have a lot of questions about the Vikings, man.
Yeah, and I think what's tough for them is there's recency bias here, right? And unfortunately, that recency bias includes 2 games against a team that's in their division who won 15 games this year. It's a lot to me. It's a lot like judging the Ravens against the Steelers. Well, it's probably not fair because these teams play so much. They're so familiar with each other, and the games can, they can make. I think Lamar Jackson looked the way against the Steelers that Sam Darnold looked the way against the Lions, if that makes sense. I think they can. A good team who's familiar with you can make a good quarterback look bad. The one thing I'll say about Sam Darnold, and I've been a big defender of him this year, that does worry me in the playoffs. He doesn't have the same ability to go off script that every other quarterback, I think, in this tournament has at the top of it. Jared Goff is not the same kind of mobility as a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen, but he can move around pretty good. And Sam Darnold doesn't have that in his game. So you saw the results of that against the Lions. They had a great game plan for him, but I do think defensively, I think they've got the best defense in football. What Brian Flores has done and those weapons on the outside and Aaron Jones, I think they'll find a way to get right after that loss.
Yeah, I get that, and I look. I thought their offensive line was better early on in the season. Like early on in the season, I was like, wow, that's the difference. Here's their offensive line, and then late in the year, it just sort of it kind of came apart for them. Jeff, you mentioned that. Based on that familiarity thing, would you be more concerned about? It's weird. The line's huge. I think the fact that the Ravens just played the Steelers a couple weeks ago and handled their business has left a little bit less concern. I don't know. This Steelers team does not seem. It seems like what's happened the last 4 weeks is right for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It feels to me more like they swam in water that was deeper than they were capable of swimming in earlier this year. They weren't really as good as their record indicated. I'm not trying to say that I think they can't win a football game. I know they've lost 4 straight. But I don't really look at the Steelers. I fear T.J. Watt, right? Like I do, but there's nothing else about the Steelers and Hayward. And I should be fair, it's their defensive front. Like it's the whole group. But I don't know. They don't look like a team that I really have a whole lot of fear in coming into Baltimore. Even though there's familiarity, even though there's contempt, all of those things. I just don't think they're that good of a football team.
Yeah, they look a lot like they did the last 2 times they were in the playoffs. Last year against Buffalo and a couple of years ago or a few years ago against Kansas City when they were the 7th seed and snuck in and got destroyed. They're a flawed football team, and I give Mike Tomlin a ton of credit for what he's done with that group, but they have to think long and hard about how they're going to build that team moving forward because it feels like it's been the same team for the last 5 years. Playing really good defense, relying on turnovers. Like Mike Tomlin, after they played the Chiefs, was just like, well, the ball was on the ground a couple of times. Ball got knocked up in the air. We didn't catch it. Fumbled a punt. We didn't get it. I'm like, you need all that stuff to happen to win a football game.
Yeah.
You're not a really good football team. And I have a hard time believing if you lose to the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Eagles towards the end of the regular season, all playoff teams, that you're going to start beating those kind of teams in the playoffs. I'm totally with you. I think that they got the most out of that group that they could hope for, and I don't think that's a good sign moving forward for them.
What about the Ravens' history in the playoffs? How much do you think that matters? Like, I feel like it matters to all of us significantly, right? Like on the outside, everybody's going to talk about it. Like, oh, it's the playoffs again. The Ravens are going to disappoint you. I don't know how much that impacts them. Like if they fall behind on Saturday night, I don't know if. It feels like this is a different Lamar Jackson, and I don't know. I don't know what to make of the significance of the weight that they might be carrying based on their past playoff letdowns.
Oh, I don't think anybody knows, and I don't believe that John Harbaugh would allow his team to get caught up in, okay, we haven't done X, Y, and Z. We didn't win last year. And he's a really good coach. They have a really good team. But it's encouraging that the defense has played at a much higher level. It's encouraging that Justin Tucker hasn't been missing kicks lately. But you're right. It comes down to they look great when they're blowing teams out. They usually are. When they're winning, they're usually running away from teams. The real question is when they get into those moments when you got to have a big play, it's a critical moment. And I hate to put it on him, but is Lamar going to make that play? And it's the one thing about him you don't know. And the last time I was watching him in that kind of situation, which was against the Kansas City Chiefs in week 1, he had 3 downs where 3 guys were open and he had 3 incompletions. Like that can't happen in the playoffs. And I've seen Josh Allen make those throws. I've seen Joe Burrow make those throws. I've seen Patrick Mahomes obviously make a ton of those throws. It's his time to do it. And it's the only reason why, to me, he's not the MVP, because I just don't know if he can still do if he can do that.
Wait, so you've got? Would you say that Josh Allen's the MVP then?
He's my MVP. Actually, there's 2 reasons why he's not the MVP. One is that. The other is, Derrick Henry ran for the quietest 1,900 yards in the history of football. It's not a one-man show over there. And when they were 0-2, they rode his back into contention, and that to me is a big deal.
I know what you're saying. And I think it required Lamar Jackson to be significantly better than Josh Allen, but like he was. Like that's the part that I struggle with. Like he was significantly better than Josh Allen this year, and that's it's a weird place, Jeff, because somebody else in Baltimore would scream and fight you about this. I genuinely don't care all that much about it. Like I'm kind of over the debate about it. Just I think that Josh Allen's going to win, and I think it's going to be in part people trying to make legitimate arguments, and I think there'll be a lot of people that are just going to say he's not 1-1 and Lamar's 1-2, so I'm just going to default to Josh Allen, and that's the way that it's going to go. It's human nature. But like with respect to Josh Allen, who I think is incredible, it's tough to watch. Like, he stunk for a few games this year, and Lamar Jackson never stinks. Like, he has games by his standard that aren't as good, where you're like, man, what happened there? On Sunday, for example, like you'd say, hey, he wasn't as good, or on Saturday, he wasn't as good as Lamar Jackson usually is. And he was the best player on the field by far. Like, that's the part that I struggle with, is like his worst day, he's still altering games, whereas like Josh Allen lost them football games this year. He was terrible against the Texans. I mean, he was awful in Baltimore. Like, that's the part that it feels like the standard is different for Lamar for some reason. It's very hard to put my finger on it. Like, it just feels like there's a strange standard that we're looking for. And I get your, like, in the playoffs, he's got to prove that, but like it's a good thing to me that they're constantly winning by a lot. I don't know, it's a strange argument. I don't know. I know I'm just sort of rambling at this point, Jeff, but it's strange to me.
No, I think I understand the argument. Look, I would have no problem if Lamar Jackson won the MVP. I think he's made a phenomenal case with his numbers, and he's done historical stuff. I just think that award is really it's more about narrative, and it's more about moments. And that, I think, is what I think he's going to run away with Offensive Player of the Year, to be honest with you, if Josh Allen's the MVP, because there's no one close to him. Maybe Saquon, but we've seen 2,000 yards before. We haven't seen what Lamar's done. But when you talk about overall impact, I think what separates Josh Allen when it comes to the narrative is the Bills lost a lot of leaders. Their offense was not supposed to be this good. He was a guy who was very careless, reckless with the football. And he didn't have as much talent around him as Lamar Jackson had. And I think that when you go, and so that's the narrative part, and the moments part is beating Detroit on the road with 3 starters in your secondary hurt, and beating Kansas City and giving them their only loss. Detroit and Kansas City have 4 losses this year, and the Bills gave them 2 of them. and that's with Josh Allen playing a huge role in both those games. Again, no knock on Lamar, but like Josh Allen, that run against Kansas City, the plays against the Detroit, the 6 touchdowns against the Rams in a loss. I think all that stuff people remember, and they say, "Oh my God, this guy is playing at a level where this team would probably have 3 wins if he wasn't there." Like, I think if Lamar wasn't with Baltimore,
they'd have 3
I think
wins.
they could still be a winning team.
They'd be terrible. No, come on, Jeff. They'd be awful.
Yeah, but
they'd be awful. We saw that. We saw the Titans. Like, we know that. We have the standard.
And I would also say that, unfortunately for Lamar, those wins he had when he against like Buffalo, Derrick Henry ran for almost 200 yards in that game. The loss to the Steelers, the first one, like, that was a tough loss for him. Not good stats. I mean, I just can't think of the one game he had against a really good team where it was like, oh my God, maybe Tampa Bay, who was in the middle of a 4-game losing streak at that time, wasn't as good as they are now. But he hadn't had that game where you're like, that's why he's the MVP.
It's tough for me. I mean, he was great.
And he had it last year against San Francisco.
Well, yeah. I mean, they were overwhelming in those games. I get it. I think this goes back to like the standard of Lamar. Like, he was great in the Texans game, but yeah, Derrick Henry exists. Like, this is a really interesting. I think this is a case study that goes beyond this. I think that this is, again, almost like the burden that Lamar Jackson carries now. We're just so used to him being so good that we are almost like numb to it. You know what I mean? Like, we kind of we get back to the end, and like, again, to your point, he did things this year that no one has ever done in the history of football, and we're sort of like, yeah, but when was he so amazing? Like, he was amazing every game.
Patrick Mahomes has the same problem.
There's something to be said for that, right? There's something to be said for that, 100%.
And in a different season, like, people would say, you know what, he's had a down year, but they're 15-1. Look at what he's been doing, but he's gonna have to like do incredible stuff now to just be in contention, and that's where Lamar is. I mean, unfortunately for Lamar, and here's where the stats argument to me goes out the window, is that he didn't have great stats last year, and he won it. And he won it because
yeah.
that team was had the first round bye, and they beat the Niners.
Well, and there
the
just also weren't good candidates last year. Like that, it's part of it. We sat here and had this conversation last year about how like this would be the year that we should consider guys that aren't quarterbacks to be MVP. Like that, and I think that's one that I've heard from people like, oh, well, it wasn't a stats thing a year ago. You're right, but that's because nobody had them. Like there just wasn't a compelling argument last year from someone else whose stats were so good. I think like Dak Prescott would have had the best stats argument, and try to tell me that Dak Prescott was the MVP of the NFL a year ago. I think
I'll tell you what also hurts. I think what also hurts Lamar is that those teams that he beat down the stretch were so diminished. I mean, now we look at the Steelers and the Texans, we're like, yeah, they weren't that good. And so if those teams were like 12-5 or 14-3, we'd be like, yeah, okay, he beat up some good teams.
Yeah,
it just feels like he padded his stats.
Yeah, that's the horse race argument, and I don't. Again, I don't know. I keep coming away from this saying like this is a historic. I mean, if Lamar doesn't win, it's going to be the greatest season in NFL history that wasn't an MVP season. Like it's insane. And I just think that we're at a different standard. And again, it sounds like I'm really worked up about it. I promise you I'm not, because he's got
I'm sure people are.
He's got to prove that he can do it. Again, the thing that matters now is the other thing, right? Like he's good. He's got 2 MVPs. Like you win 2 MVPs in the NFL, you're in the Hall of Fame. That's the way. Like there is no one that's done that that's not in the Hall of Fame.
Here's what I'll say. If they had beaten Kansas City in Week 1, I think he'd be the MVP. I think he'd be the front runner right now. I think that sticks in people's minds.
That's a really weird. Like I would almost argue if you just beat the Browns and the Raiders and you don't have 5 losses, right? Like it's a goofy thing, man. We could do this forever. We could do this forever. I always appreciate you. What's coming up? What are you working on this week?
Just getting ready for the playoffs. I've been trying to get a running back story done forever, and it's just been hard to do. It's just about the renaissance of running backs. It's probably going to be an off-season thing, but I'm just getting ready for the games now.
At Jeffri Chadiha, that's JEFFRI CHADIHA, and we've linked up his story this week from NFL.com as well as on our Twitter account at Glenn Clark Radio. Always appreciate you, brother. Love you. Thank you for doing this. Let's fight more at some point down the road.
That's right. Same here, man. Happy New Year to you.
Thanks, buddy. You too. Jeff Chadiha with us here on GCR. Look, man, and Florio brought this up when we talked to him last week. In the world where there is no definition for how to pick an MVP, it does allow for people to make their own definitions for MVP. And that argument of, well, one guy beat the top seed in both conferences, one guy had the best pair of wins this season, is a viable argument for why someone would choose that person to be the MVP. Because there's no obvious world. And that choice will be made. Not just by Jeff Chadiha, by others. Other people will say, I think it's close, and one of these guys beat the Chiefs and beat the Lions, and nobody else did that. So I'm going with that guy. And we'll sit back and we'll say, I'll have no choice but to say, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. And he was, certainly good in the Chiefs game and great in the Lions game. So, there's not going to be a giant argument to say, well, yeah, but that doesn't. What we're really saying is we think other things matter as much. And I do think that we've gotten to a place where Lamar Jackson's been so good that we're almost bored by it. My guy, Seren Petro, who I know does a podcast with Jeff down in Kansas City, he was talking to me about it last week and said, I think there are going to be voters that are going to say, dude, we've given you 2 MVPs and you haven't even made a Super Bowl yet. Like, we feel like we're being bitten in the ass by this. And I said, boy, it's crazy to me that's the thought process that would exist. As I've said a million times, I've made peace with it. I think Josh Allen's going to win the MVP award this year. I think that's going to happen. And we will care about that exactly as much as, are the Ravens playing in a game 3 days later? If the Ravens aren't, then it's like, the only thing you have left to win. Like you want to feel what winning feels like. Everybody likes to win. So if the Ravens aren't in the Super Bowl, then you feel like you're losing. If the Ravens are playing in the Super Bowl, and it just so happens to be that week on Thursday night you find out that Lamar Jackson didn't win MVP, you care about it for all of 3 seconds. And then you care about the football game that you're playing in on Sunday. Perhaps you're getting on your flight to get to New Orleans. Josh Allen won MVP. Okay, cool. Let's go win the Super Bowl. I've made peace. I don't think he's winning the MVP award. I think Josh Allen's winning. I think there's a lot of all of the various different factors. There are people that will make legitimate arguments. There are people that will try to mask the fact that what they're really doing is just giving Josh Allen the MVP because Lamar Jackson's won 2, and it's time for somebody else to win. I think that's going to happen. And they'll either straight up, they might not say it if they defend their vote, but that might really be in their head where they're at. It doesn't change the way I feel. I think Lamar Jackson is more special than these humans. I think every time he touches the field, he is the definition of the word valuable. And the using Derrick Henry argument against him, it's fascinating to me, right? Like, is it just going to be MVP is the player that has
the least around them, or
like is that? I don't know what to do with that, right? Like I don't know how to make things more neutral because. Like what I really don't know. I don't know what to do with that. And it's interesting that if that's what you think, is that if Josh Allen has so little around him, then how could they really be do you think Josh Allen's the greatest player that's ever existed in football history? Because if so, then if he has that little around him, then I can understand why you would think he would still be capable of winning the Super Bowl. But it would require you to believe that he's the greatest player in football history. It feels like we're doing this duality thing where, like, God, it's just so amazing how Josh Allen was able to overcome nobody. But also, I think the Bills can win the Super Bowl. Well, if it's just one guy going against 11, how could they win? It's a strange duality that we feel. And we can't define it. There's no way to define it. We don't have a neutral, this is like in baseball where we try to make every ballpark equal. If we made all ballparks equal, would this player, what number of home runs would he hit? We don't have like a way of saying what would Josh Allen be if we took a neutral football team. We have no way of doing that. So we just say it out loud. And I love, Jeff knows I love him, but it's the thing like, wow, if you took away Lamar Jackson, Baltimore might still have a winning record. Bullshit. And I love Jeff, and he knows I love him. But like, we've seen that before. Yes, the Titans had a couple of good seasons when Derrick Henry was there, when they had higher level quarterback play. And I know that's crazy to call Ryan Tannehill higher-level quarterback play, but in context, that was their higher-level quarterback play. And then we watched the last few years where he mired with as good as Derrick Henry didn't discover being good again in Baltimore. Derrick Henry was still Derrick Henry. They didn't have a quarterback. And so everybody could stuff the box against Derrick Henry. You take away Lamar Jackson, the Ravens stink. Because we know. Like, we just know. It's the argument of, well, if they didn't have Josh Allen, they'd win 3 games. Would the Ravens win 4? Like
if it was Josh Johnson? Yeah.
I know they wouldn't win anything with Tyler Huntley. I know that much.
They win 1 game, yeah.
What's that? Who did they beat? I can't remember who they beat with Tyler Huntley.
They lost the Packers. I keep thinking they did not beat the Packers.
Yeah, because it came down. They were competitive.
I can't remember
they
who
were
they beat.
competitive in some of them. They were really competitive.
They'll be competitive.
Yes, they'll be competitive.
Because they are a good team. Or like
right,
a
they
good
are.
roster,
they are fairly well constructed, but they're not going to win them because it requires you to have the guy that goes and wins the games. And that's the same thing.
So it would have served Lamar better to not win all these games by 5 touchdowns and
yeah, you have the moments instead.
Yes, yeah.
Like if you're the guy at the end of the game,
let him hang around.
Well, and look, it's an interesting argument he makes about the Chiefs game, right? Like if Isaiah Likely gets his toe down, and they get the 2-point conversion, then that's pretty high on the list. Then the argument that people would make about, well, Josh Allen beat the the Chiefs and the Lions, then you could turn around and say, right, and Lamar Jackson beat the Chiefs and the Bills. Like, so now what? So now where's your argument?
The other one I liked, I think someone pointed out Tom Brady's 2010 MVP run, where I think was that the year that he only threw like 4 interceptions or something, and then like high 30s touchdowns. And then they said, imagine if Tom Brady had just ran for 800 yards.
On top of that, right? On top of all of that, he had also run for 800 yards. I don't know. I don't know. I'm in a strange place. Do I think that Derrick Henry is the best player that either of those two guys has? Yes, 1,000%. I feel that way. I do. Do I think that means that Lamar Jackson had to be better than Josh Allen was this year? Yeah, I think there's an argument that like we would have to acknowledge that. Like if you want to be MVP and you've got Derrick Henry on your team, then you're going to have to be like that much better. But like he was that much better than Josh Allen this year. Which doesn't mean that Josh Allen stinks or that Josh Allen isn't, to me, the number 2 on the list. Like it's a weird bit. But also, I'm telling you, he's going to win. Like he's going to win. It's going to happen. Just make your peace with it and go try to win the Super Bowl. Go try to win the thing that matters.
Should we pull up the 50 AP voters and just go one by
one? One by one?
Who do we think who they're voting for?
Yeah, I'm not really interested.
Orlovsky's taking Allen.
Yeah, we know
does
that.
He have a vote? Does he? I don't even know.
Orlovsky does have a vote.
Okay.
He does have a vote. Hang on a second. I did find the list recently. Florio's got a vote.
Okay.
I think
and he was leaning towards Allen.
No, I thought Florio was leaning.
Okay.
I got the sense that he was leaning towards Lamar when we were talking to him. But again, leaning towards Lamar. I think Mike Sando has said that he's leaning towards Lamar, and he's got a vote. The voters are
Tom Brady,
Emmanuel Hacho, of all the times.
Wow, what's wrong with him?
It's been quite the week. Greg Allman from Fox Sports, I don't know him. Howard Balzer, who's a long time, he was an AP guy for years, and now he's apparently working in Phoenix. I didn't know that. Jarrett Bell from USA Today, Dave Burkett from the Detroit Free Press, Tom Brady.
Yeah, Tom Brady. Who's he going to vote for?
Tom Brady
He's
has
going to vote for Baker.
Who was I talking to about that recently? That's a joke, that Tom Brady. It is. And like
there's one vote in there for Max Crosby, and it's like, well.
No, yeah. Sure. No, it's Tom Brady. Like, how does someone not step in and say, hey, man, love you, believe you're capable of separating but, like, we need to set the standard that once you work for a football team or you can't be a neutral voter. How's that hard?
He created football, though, didn't he?
I get it. It was pointed out to me, and I'm not doing a conspiracy thing here. Apparently, Dan Orlovsky does a weekly appearance on a Bills media thing. And a lot of the internet has gone to this like dark place of, oh, well, you're just protecting you get paid by the team, so you're protecting them. I have no idea. I don't know if we know that Dan Orlovsky gets paid by the team. Yes, typically when somebody does a weekly appearance somewhere, they're getting paid. I don't know. It could be a friend. Like, for example, Patrick Stevens, it's a friendship thing. Here at Pressbox, Bo Smolka, it's because he works for Pressbox.
Drew, we have to pay.
Yeah, Drew, obviously, we have to pay a lot of money. God, it's ridiculous. Every week he wants more and more. Sometimes it's a friendship thing. I don't know. Maybe I don't know who the host is on this show. If it's Steve Tasker, maybe Steve Tasker and Dan Orlovsky are great friends, and that's the reason why he does it. But to be fair, if he does get paid, then he shouldn't be a voter. And I would say the same thing. Like, I guess technically Rod Woodson doesn't work for the Ravens. He works for WBAL, I think, is who pays him. That's where you get your check from. But I would feel the same way. If Rod Woodson was a voter, I would say he shouldn't be a voter. Like, there's too much of a conflict of interest there, even if we believe that these people aren't making decisions because of it. To your point, I don't think Tom Brady's going to vote for Gardner Minshew.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, there might be a case.
It still should be a world where we're capable of saying, hey, man, if you do this, you can't be a neutral voter anymore. It's okay. It's not like we don't love you. We're not kicking you out of Fox. We're not kicking you out of any of those things. We're just saying that we need to have 50 people that we do our best to eliminate conflict of interest for. Tom Brady, Teddy Bruschi. I guess it's just all former Patriots get the vote. Vic Carucci, who is based out of Buffalo, so could vote for anybody. Mark Craig from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, so if there's a vote in there for Sam Darnold. Tom Curran. Boy, a lot of Boston there, huh? Charles Davis. Love Charles Davis. Nate Davis from USA Today. Howard Deneroff from Westwood One. Tony Dungy from Yuri Epstein from Yahoo. Boomer Esiason. Doug Farrar from USA Today. Mike Florio. Ruben Frank, who covers the Eagles for NBC Sports. Rich Gannon is a voter. Jonathan Jones from CBS. Lindsey Jones from The Ringer. Mike Jones from The Athletic.
Who?
Clark Judge, love Clark Judge. Ira Kaufman, who's a longtime writer down in Tampa. Mina Kimes. Peter King. I thought Peter King retired.
Is that so? Is it possible that that's last year's list? I would assume it's probably almost the same, like virtually the same.
Oh, you know what? It is last year's list. My bad, dude. You're right.
Okay.
It's last year's list. That's my fault. My fault. I screwed
They
that
might
one
not
up.
have an updated one out there.
Yeah, take it back. Take
Why
it back.
is it so secretive?
Take it back. No idea. No idea. Hang on a second. Somebody else seems to think. Oh, somebody else has the list.
Oh, okay.
Nope. We found out this one is also last year's list. So the answer is we don't know.
Oh,
That's the answer.
okay.
That's the answer.
So maybe
we don't know.
probably Dan Orlovsky.
Presumably. I don't know how much they change these from year to year. I
Yeah.
have no idea. All right, when we we're good, right? We got to take one more break. When we come back in, we'll get a tidbit, we'll get tubular to wind things down for a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at costasinn.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now, and it's our very special Best of 2024 issue. On the cover, we celebrate our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, Lamar Jackson, as Bo Smolka profiles what the quarterback means to the community beyond the football field. Also inside, we celebrate the top people, performances, and moments of the year in local sports. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always read the entire issue and find the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Need a trophy or award that's as unique as the achievement? Look no further than Crown Trophy. With locations in Owings Mills and Gaithersburg, they specialize in custom trophies, plaques, and medals for any occasion. From sports and academic awards to employee recognition and corporate gifts, visit crowntrophy.com today and let them help you create a lasting memory for your school, team, or business. Crown Trophy is a proud supporter of the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association. crowntrophy.com.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
All right, back in here on GCRs. We are winding down for a Tuesday edition of the program. I feel like we covered everything that we needed to cover today. The Suns won. Hey, yeah, that was good news last night. All I had to do was put Bradley Beal on the bench. I think they scored 16 points in the first quarter, and I was ready to lose it. Ready to lose it. But they won. That's all that matters. No, everybody else in town was very worried about that too. So There you go. Suns won.
Congrats.
Yeah,
sure.
I feel like that was it. Somebody.
The Jags just said that they are requesting Todd Monken as well.
Okay, so another interview request for Todd Monken. Look, I'm not surprised by that. I don't know where Todd Monken will be. Like it feels like one of those things where like enough teams asked to interview. This isn't like a young. It's one thing when it's a young coach and you have genuine questions about their ability. Like, are they ready for the moment yet? I don't think that there's a lot of questions like that with Todd Monken. I think that he is respected in football. He's been a head coach at the college level. So I don't think it's one of those where like he's a year away or something like that. I just think it comes down to whether or not he is the preferred candidate. The more interviews that he takes, you know, it does. You get to the point where you're like, well, so there are 5 open jobs right now. Hang on,
At the moment, yes.
Chicago, the Jets, the Saints, the Jags. Who's the 5th? Who am I for?
Chicago, Jets, Saints.
Is it just? Oh, and the Patriots, right? Yeah, the Patriots. Yes, correct. But we're pretty sure the Patriots are hiring Vrabel. Like we're pretty confident about that. So it's sort of why we
got to interview everybody though. But yes,
we think that's the way it's going to go. Is that ultimately Vrabel is going to be their coach? So you're looking at provided nothing else, you know, and we don't know what's going to go on in Dallas. It's bizarre, but presumably if it's not Mike McCarthy, it's because he's taking one of these other jobs. So you presume there's really like 4 jobs that are available. So then you think Ben Johnson's getting one of them. Like you're pretty confident like that you're going to go another year. So it looks like there's 3 jobs that are at risk. And
Aaron Glenn is getting
Aaron Glenn certainly after Sunday night everybody's talking about him, but it always comes back to the question of like Mike Vrabel's a defensive guy that's going to get a job. It's always a question as to how many teams are willing to hire a defensive-minded head coach. And I don't know the answer. Like I certainly think there's an argument that Aaron Glenn deserves to be a head coach, but will he get that? I don't know. Because I don't know. Oh, and you know, there's the possibility the Jets go back to Rex Ryan, right? Like there's still the possibility of that. I don't think they will. I think like he just sort of talks through his ass because he's Rex Ryan.
So the Jags shared all the candidates that they requested. So Kellen Moore was on their list.
Yeah.
Joe Brady in Buffalo.
Okay.
Liam Cohen in Tampa.
I thought Josh McCown would be more in play for. Like, we remember how crazy it was when the Cowboys were trying to hire Josh McCown a couple years ago, like, without any experience. But now, like, we've seen it. Dude, he got competency out of Sam Darnold. Like, I'm a little surprised there hasn't been more bluster about McCown.
Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, Robert Saleh, the Jags, and then Patrick Graham, who is the Raiders defensive coordinator, which I did have to look up.
Okay. Okay. I mean, sure. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see with Todd Monken. But, yeah, the more that he's connected to head coaching jobs, the worse you feel about it. And there's always the other part, too, which is some teams are happy to wait as long as they need to wait. Other teams really want to get a coach in place. And, you know, was it the year the Eagles reached the Super Bowl and they lost both coordinators? Those teams were willing to wait. They were happy to wait. Some teams don't want to do that. It's almost like we need whoever loses this weekend, we're hiring that guy because we want to have our coach in place already. So
Arthur Smith, then
Arthur Smith. Well, I think it does become does it benefit the Ravens if they make a deep run in the playoffs to try to hold on to Todd Monken?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so what? So that was Steichen and Gannon that got it.
Yeah,
hired
Steichen and Gannon.
And they're doing so well now. So
yeah, you think that's going to screw it up? I mean, somebody would ask, would it have made a difference last year if the Ravens made the Super Bowl for Mike McDonald to get hired? And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, let's go ahead and get a tidbit. Tidbit is brought to you today by Project Game Day. Project Game Day returns. We'll be back on Saturday night. Myself, Rita, Femi, the whole crew, immediately following the wild card matchup between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Come hang out with us. PressBoxOnline.com/GameDay. It's brought to you by the CIAA tournament as well as HelpMyGamblingProblem.org and EasyPass.
Cam Miller.
The quarterback for North Dakota State.
North Dakota's quarterback had a pretty impressive game last night as he
Is that,
completed.
by the way, do they have Trey Lance's brother on the team too? Did I see that?
His name is.
It's not.
His name is Lance, right?
But it's not his brother.
I don't know. It was what's his name? Brian. Lance?
Yeah.
Brandon Lance or something.
I realized because I was only kind of like sort of paying
Bryce
attention.
Lance.
Bryce Lance.
I don't want to make any sweeping generalizations here. Let's see. He is, his older brother is Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, he is the brother of Trey Lance, and he's pretty good at wide receiver. He might be better at wide receiver than Trey Lance is.
It might very well be, yes.
But his quarterback, Cam Miller, threw for, he completed over 80% of his passes on over 28 pass attempts. He had he had multiple passing touchdowns, multiple rushing touchdowns. He rushed for 100 yards, obviously, had that long run, and in over a 60-yard touchdown run.
It's something really bad about it being a run up the middle too. Like if you give up a 60-some-yard run up the middle by a quarterback,
saw what defense they were in, and it's a quick draw and
bad.
No safeties over the top. At least no one dating back to at least 2000. So no one this century has ever done all 5 of those things in a game, in a football game, NFL, FCS, FBS level. No one has completed 80% of their passes, multiple passing touchdowns.
He's the
multiple rushing
MVP.
touchdowns.
That's it.
Maybe.
That's it.
Yeah.
Cam Miller wins MVP.
Cam Miller in North Dakota State. And then also, perhaps you saw that Roquan Smith became the youngest player.
I did see that.
In NFL history to reach 1,000 career tackles, 1,000 combined tackles
Mm-hmm.
for Roquan Smith, fastest player or youngest player to do it. And he became the 7th active player with 1,000 tackles.
Huh. Okay.
As well.
Bobby Wagner?
Bobby Wagner is, he's the leader among active guys, over 1,800 tackles for Bobby Wagner.
Fred Warner?
Fred Warner is not there yet. He is at 897. Bum.
I feel like I'm a little surprised by that.
Guess he'll reach it next year, assuming health. Yeah.
Levante David.
Levante David is number 2 among the active guys, 1,600 tackles.
C.J. Mosley?
C.J. Mosley is on the list. 1,083 tackles for C.J. Mosley.
I'm like wondering if we should go with so now Calais Campbell, for example.
He's a good guess, but he is not.
Yeah,
he is north of 900, but he is.
The easy thing to say is just go inside linebackers, but then you're like, well, he's just been around for so goddamn long that maybe he could get there. Man. How about Demario Davis?
Demario Davis is an excellent guess. He is on the list.
Okay.
Demario Davis has he is 7 tackles shy of 1,400. He is 3rd most among active guys.
How about again? It's not an inside linebacker. Harrison Smith.
Harrison Smith is an excellent guess. He's on the list as well. You're doing a great job here. Harrison Smith, over 1,100 tackles, 5th most among active guys. We're missing the 4th guy.
The 4th guy.
Mm-hmm.
The 4th guy. You
with
say.
Also just under 1,200 tackles.
I don't know. Wow. I'm trying to think of other safeties, like Tyrann Mathieu.
Not Tyrann Mathieu. He is a linebacker.
He's a linebacker.
Is Tyrann Mathieu still active?
It's actually a good question.
He is on this list. They count him active. He has 830. So
I don't even know who he was playing for most recently, to be honest with you. Man, I don't know that I'm going to come up with this. I really don't.
So he spent because I don't think this is going to help you too much. He was a Cowboy this year.
He was a Cowboy this year. Lawrence.
No,
he's not a linebacker.
No. Apparently, Tyrann Mathieu is on the Chiefs roster.
Has he just been hurt?
I guess. I don't know.
Or is he playing and we just don't realize that he's playing?
Sorry, the Saints. My bad.
The
Saints.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been with the Saints apparently the last 2 seasons.
Has he been playing and we just don't watch the Saints, so we don't know?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that's the case.
I think we just don't watch the Saints is a problem. Cowboys. I don't know. I really don't. I mean,
so before that,
Leighton Vander Esch.
No, not Leighton Vander Esch. So he was with the Cowboys this year. Last season he was with the Chargers. And before that, he spent the majority of his front end of his career with this NFC North team.
NFC North. Oh, Hicks.
No, not Hicks.
No, I didn't mean Hicks. I meant Kendricks.
Yes,
Kendricks,
yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah,
Yep,
sorry.
Eric Kendricks with the Vikings.
Yeah, Kendricks.
Under 1,200 tackles. Were you thinking of Jordan Hicks?
Yeah, I was thinking of Jordan Hicks, but I don't know.
He is at 950 for what it's worth.
But that's not. I just said. I really just said Hicks. I meant to say Kendricks.
Jordan Hicks has been all over Philly, Arizona. He was in Minnesota for what it's worth.
I'm telling you, I just got the name. It wasn't like I didn't get the people confused. I just said the wrong name.
Eric Kendricks.
No, kinda, but I don't know what happened there. I don't know. All right, that's it. That's the list.
Yeah, that is the list. There's the 7 guys active. Roquan Smith rounding out that list of active players with 1,000 tackles.
Tidbit was also brought to you by the CIAA tournament.
Yes, it was, because Baltimore is welcoming the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament to the CFG Bank Arena once again from February 25th through March 1st. Be sure to get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com for the Food Line CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at CFG Bank Arena.
All right, now let's get tubular.
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
All right, here's what's coming up totally tubular-wise. Kind of a mixed bag today. One local team is in action. Morgan was postponed from yesterday, as Patrick mentioned. They're at home.
Standalone game.
Yeah, home against NC Central today at 4 o'clock on ESPN+. A lot of hoops on ESPN+. I guess the Big 12 is like entirely on ESPN+ now. I don't know what's going on. Like what
were they on?
I don't.
Because you mean they're exclusively on like ESPN?
Yeah, like they were previously like on TV, but like on tonight ESPN.
Kansas does have a lot of.
It's weird tonight. Arizona, West Virginia, Utah, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Baylor, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, BYU, all ESPN Plus games. Very weird. That's because ESPN, of course, has to show you video game golf. Hell yeah, baby. I'm not going to bother to list the matchups in the video game golf league each week. I'm not going to do that.
Why not?
No.
How are we supposed to know?
I flatly refuse. Video game golf tonight at 9 o'clock on ESPN, if that's something that does something for you. Tennessee, Florida at 7 on ESPN2 is probably the headliner in college basketball tonight. The rest of the college hoops, Big Ten hoops on Peacock, Nebraska, Iowa at 8, Michigan, UCLA at 10. Not really impressed, by the way, with the Peacock broadcast on Sunday.
Neither was I.
It was. I Terry Gannon, who this is the wild part. Terry Gannon actually played college basketball. So if anybody and he's great at figure skating and he's great at gymnastics it feels like you're listening to a gymnastics announcer doing a basketball game. Like not a great. Yeah.
Well, that's all right. We probably got Jack Collinsworth tonight, so then.
Well, it doesn't matter. Maryland's not playing. I'm not watching tonight. I'm, of course, watching. I'll be watching video game golf.
You're supposed to be a Big Ten basketball fan, supporter of Big Ten basketball. Me.
Monumental tonight for Rockets Wizards at 7 o'clock. TNT Lakers Mavs at 7:30. That's also on True TV. And then Celtics Nuggets at 10. The CW for WWE NXT tonight at 8. From the Shrine, it's WWE New Year's Evil, of course, tonight, Griffin. You don't know that.
Yeah.
You of course know that it's at the Shrine Auditorium in L.A. and The Rock said he'll be showing up tonight.
Wow.
Well, his daughter is the general manager of NXT. I'm sure you knew that. Yeah, who am I telling?
Good for her.
It makes sense that The Rock's going to go over and check in. I think it's Take Your Dad to Work Day or something like that is what it is. Non-sports.
There's quite a few things. We got Deal or No Deal Island, of course, Season 2 on NBC tonight at 8. And then we're going to have Pamela Anderson will be on Fallon. She is in a movie with Jamie Lee Curtis coming out. I forget. I don't know when it comes out. It's The Last Showgirl, and it looks pretty well done.
Okay.
It's by Gia Coppola.
Is related to
yes,
Francis?
Yes,
Okay, all
she
right.
is.
Yeah. Like you're saying that, like I'm supposed to know. the extensive.
Coppola. Well, you should know Coppola.
Well, yes, I'm familiar with the name, but like you said it, like
Dave
has she directed
Bautista.
other things that I'm familiar with?
I don't know if she's done anything.
Okay.
At least none that I'm familiar with, at least off the top
Is
of my
this
head.
a daughter, I'm assuming?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Dave Bautista's in it. So is Brenda Song. It looks well done. I'm not sure if it's necessarily for...
Brenda Song is lovely. She is a lovely, very handsome
She'll be one of the
woman.
showgirls, I think. In The Last Showgirl.
Who did she marry? Was it Macaulay Culkin? She married Macaulay Culkin,
did
right?
she really?
I'm pretty sure that's true.
Brenda Song did?
I'm pretty sure Brenda Song married Macaulay Culkin.
All right, you look that up, I guess.
I'm on it.
Hard Knocks, of course, on HBO at 9 tonight.
Yeah,
New episode of the-
1,000% married to Macaulay Culkin.
Wow, good for Macaulay.
No doubt about it.
New episode of Star Wars Skeleton Crew on Disney Plus, and if you were watching the WWE on Netflix last night, you know that Gabriel Iglesias has a fluffy special.
Sure.
Out tonight, as is there's this Jerry Springer like docuseries coming on Netflix as well called Fights Camera Action.
Lot of in the Boy Meets World community, which everybody knows I'm very heavily involved with. Lot of controversy because both Danielle Fishel, Topanga, and Will Friedle, who played Eric Matthews, Corey's older brother, they were sitting together at WWE Raw last night.
Oh.
And they cut over to him, and they're like, and here's Danielle Fishel. Like, the guy that she was with was just like her boyfriend or something. Like, not. They put them both on the screen, recognized that one of them, and pretended the other one
has
didn't
a Topps
exist.
baseball card.
Don't get me wrong. I love Topanga. But, like, kind of disrespectful to Will Friedle in the process. Boy, that was half of the show last night. Was
Showing all the celebrities?
Celebrities. Let's use that loosely.
Che was there, right?
Michael Che was there.
I'm trying to think of who else was.
But there was like they were like putting like Bill Simmons, like, oh, here's a huge star, Bill Simmons, like. And then apparently
there, wasn't he?
Were pointing out there were definitely some like more famous people, like Kieran Culkin was apparently there, who's definitively like famous. Like, that's a thing, and apparently they never put him on the
Maybe
screen.
not to be shown.
I don't know what the rules are. Macaulay Culkin's like a huge wrestling fan. Like, he's gone to a lot. Like, he goes like indie wrestling events and has been involved with that stuff. So that might be the reason why they put him on the screen, is because like he's been like associated with wrestling before. I don't know. But Kieran Culkin, who is like, you know, a star at the moment, did not get any notice at WWE Raw. Very weird bit. Anything else?
No, that's it. For the record, Tyrann Mathieu did play every single game this year.
We just didn't watch the Saints. That's the answer.
He didn't play very well, at least according to PFF.
Okay.
For what it's worth. Outside remember the two games, the Saints won the first 2 games of the year by like 40 to nothing.
Oh yeah,
his first
yeah.
2 games. He graded very well in those 2.
Didn't they beat the Cowboys and we were like, oh man, this is huge.
They knocked off Carolina and Dallas. Yeah, they beat Dallas by a lot.
I'm just remembering how much I love Brenda Song. She's a handsome woman, no question about that. All right, very good. Thanks today to Dr. David Chao. Thanks to Jeffri Chadiha and to Patrick Stevens. We'll get it all up in the greatest hits section of the
Can You Take Me Higher
tab at GlennClarkRadio.com. Tomorrow on the program, Brenda Fries is going to join us tomorrow night in College Park. Biggie. Juju Watkins and USC taking on the undefeated Maryland Terrapins. They got quite the test in the second half from Iowa. They built up like I watched that game. They built up like a 25-point lead, and it was like back within 6 in the second half, and I was nervous. Yeah. Nervous. But we'll talk to Brenda Fries tomorrow ahead of that big showdown and stuff and things.
Drew is scheduled to be here. Is that?
I just wanted something to promote.
Oh,
I wanted people to. Okay. The idea is we're trying to get people to listen tomorrow.
Yeah, Brenda Fries.
Yes. Stuff and things. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Visit Hartford, Live Casino and Hotel, Cruise Maryland, Crown Trophy, Easy Pass, Royal Farms, the CIAA Tournament, HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, Costa Sin, MSAA, Maryland Sports, Baltimore Orioles, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Tuesday evening. Go Morgan. Duke sucks.